And welcome back to ScavTalk, everyone. Today's episode, we're going to be discussing all the hot takes on Tarkov Twitter sphere. And boy, it is really spicy. There's a lot of stuff to go over. First, we're going to be talking about in-game ammo, the newly, freshly coined phrase. It's so popular, so rampant. I've seen it in your chat many times, which is you move, you die. Followed up by, of course, it comes around like clockwork every wipe cycle. If found in raid, kill the game. It needs to be gone. More hot takes on that. Some audio stuff. Like I've seen a lot of people talking about audio as far as should it be allowed? This kind of plays into the you move, you die, but should you be allowed to like hear people when they're slow walking? Or should it be completely silent? That's another contentious topic, which we'll get into. Followed by how the M4 mods may affix the Tarkov modding. And then finally, elitism in Tarkov. And boy, I'm not talking about skills either. Elite skills.
What a roster of topics, eh?
Know,
but also,
dude.
for video viewers, we're here with the new tech. We have the glorious new overlay, which is fantastic. So if you're watching on video, you'll be able to see the two of us, and then Church can showcase stuff in the middle, which is kind of how we got it set for now. So that's cool and exciting and new and good. But
yes.
Yeah. How things we go for you this week, Church? What have you been up to?
Pretty good, man. A lot of like different ScavTalk related things, admin stuff, etc. Personal PC hardware upgrades. I was telling Giga the other day that I got, long story short, a 5800X that's been sitting on my shelf that I thought I had installed in my PC. Was not, so I installed it. I got trying to min-max because the thing runs a little hotter than I personally like. So got the fans set up how I want it. Now it's a matter of min-maxing the CPU, undervolting. It's more on the surface it's more complicated than it really is, but there is a bit of a learning curve you have to do. But anyways, that's going to be something that I'll finalize and whatnot. And then other than that, just cleaning up the drive, trying to get all my files organized how I want them. Like it's kind of a thing where it's like how obsessive, how much detail do I need to go into? Like for like pictures, for example, it's like I got them all broke up like memes, icons, assets, stock images. Just like I don't really know, because I want to do the same with like audio, like sounds and music, but that's just like, it's like you have to listen to each individual. Like you can't just read the title of like a song. You gotta listen to it. It's like, okay, how do I want to categorize it? I'm thinking more like mood, like, happy vibes, sad, tense and whatnot. But it's one of the things where like once you do the legwork, it's probably really useful. But doing the legwork is just a lot to go through because I have like so many. It's probably under like 500, but for like sound files, both audio and I would imagine maybe it's closer to 1,000, but yeah, it's just a lot to go through. But once that's done, I think it will be very beneficial. And other than that, I've just been playing this game called Shadow Tactics, Shogun something, Blade of the Shogun, I think. It's like it's from like 2016. It's one of those games that's been on wishlist forever, great reviews, and it's basically an RTS stealth. It plays very similarly to like control wise, like Dota 2, basically. And it's a really good game from like a studio that I'm not really that familiar with, and they don't really have that many titles, but like this was one of their first titles, and it was really successful. It's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Yeah. No, like categorizing songs and music is difficult. Yeah, it is tricky. I have like a split down kind of by like vibe as well. I've got like,
oh nice, good for you.
Background or this or that, but I don't do that much editing of stuff that requires it, so it's not as necessary, and my catalog's not that big either. Pictures is also annoying, but I tend to just like I just have them all in like one place, and I just tend to search. I try to make titles that I'm quite, the thing I'm specific about or like picky about is titles, like titling the pictures when I save them. And if you get good at the habit of doing that, like getting into the mindset of thinking, what would I search for if I was looking for this picture? So I have titles of things which is like AK101, AK hash 101, like AK/101, AK space 101, and then like what actually is. So I've got like different markings in there just in case, like, because Windows search is sometimes a bit annoying.
Yes.
And it doesn't, if you have like 101 in there, but it's like got an like prefix that it won't show it to you and like annoying stuff like that. So yeah, trying to like work around that is kind of how I've got mine set up. So then I could just search, or alternatively, I'm just like, I just remember like, it was on this, and then I've got that saved somewhere, and I can go and find the like where I used it or something, and just like grab it from there. Like another way to do it. But yeah, songs is hard. Like you have to listen to so many tracks, and then it's yes, there's like so much, especially if you're doing like copyright free stuff. There's a lot of garbage tracks out there, so you have to listen to like a lot of music, even just to source them in the first place, and like different tracks just don't really necessarily fit the vibe, and like it's hard. Like some of my favorite pieces of music I just can't use in content because it's either like too distracting, or the instruments just don't really like, they don't work as an underlay to something else. Like they're okay as like an interlude maybe, but yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. Yeah, I mean this week. That's what we've been doing here in the Tarky land. We've been getting our asses handed to us on Lighthouse. Oh my god. We basically spent... I was trying to find the vertexes, the classic Lend-Lease 2 thing. Find one CFDM radio and one vertex. Yes. So far I found a vertex in the Moonshine scav box and a CFDM radio on Streets, which tells me just how well Lighthouse has been going for me. We played, I think it was the Tuesday stream, we played for 6 raids. And we died in 5 out of the 6, and the one that we didn't die, and we literally didn't see anybody. Went to loot the chalet, and like there was nothing there, and we left. So it's just like Lighthouse is so hard, like especially now and the way that the things are going. It wasn't even like we weren't getting kills. Like on some of them, I killed like 2 people, and then ended up just getting third party by somebody else. It's very difficult to move around that map, right? So it's actually really claustrophobic because of how slim it is, and like I don't even want to go anywhere near the road camp really. But it's, if you, and it's mainly spawns as well. It's like if you can't run down the middle of the road. Well, saying that, I mean, I'll tell a funny story about that in a minute. But like you can't really run down the middle of the road, so it leaves like the beach route, and then the hills route around the chalet. Because if you go down on the ground and somebody spots you, like there's just nowhere to go and you just die. So there's really only like down the bottom end of the map from like Southern Road. You either go along the beach or you go up in the hills. So you're like almost guaranteed to meet people at some point, even if you're not going to the hotspots. It's just like it's very difficult to reverse around that map. And because some of the sight lines are really long, sometimes you just get spotted from a million miles away and people are plinking at you. You just don't really know where from. And people can lie in wait fairly easily. And because everybody can hear, even if you're fighting suppressed, like a lot of people can hear you. So you just bring in a lot of traffic from people trying to hunt people down. And there's a lot of PMC kill quests there and stuff. So it's just hard. But like I keep getting told a million times, everyone, oh no, you have to go into the road camp, and that's the best way, and Lighthouse is the best place. And I'm just like, well, it's not the best place if you just die every raid, right? Like it just makes it really, really tough. You can't just like wander in. And it's when people say, oh, you just watch the guides on the road camp. Like, yeah, you just have to cheese it, but like just watch the guides and it's easy. And it's like, that's fine if there's nobody else in the raid. But like often it's, you try to snipe the first guy, the second guy who gets there from the second spawn, he's looking over at the rogues. And he's like, oh, the first guy's gone, so there must be somebody here. So then you start getting shot by M62 from someone that you can't see, and you're like trying to get into the right position, but then there's no cover. Then you have to run in, and then you're being shot by the rogues, and the whole thing falls apart. So it just gets really complicated, which is why I try to like leave the rogue camp alone. But either which way, we've got one vertex left to get. So I started running reserve instead for it because I just think like reserve's just a bit more fun, honestly. And we're using the MP7, but I had like one ridiculous raid where I heard somebody. Oh, well, I decided to run down the road because I'd spawned there on Lighthouse. We ran all the way down the main road, started getting shot along the way, pop off, painkillers, whatever. Managed to escape. Got down to the bit by the Merin car, just underneath like the big sort of sniping spot, like the Stupid Rock, that kind of area. We were down by Merin car. End up in a fight with somebody there. Like he whiffs. We end up killing him. Then there's somebody else who I ran all the way to the beach to the little house by the beach, and hid up in there for a while. Then I was like, oh, maybe we should just go and loot him. But I don't want to loot him because somebody could be up on the sniping spot now. So I go up on the sniping spot and obviously like get shot on the sniping spot. I'm like running out of I've like completely run out of meds because I swapped out my AFAC. I was using the car kit, and everyone's like, oh, car kit, everyone just had a complete field day, right? Because I ran out of meds for the first time in like 3 wipes. And I was like, oh, it's because I swapped out the car, the AFAC. That I always take a pocket AFAC if I use the car kit because sometimes you do need it. And I swapped it out for a paracord. So I had because I wanted to use the exit, right? Because I was intending on going to Chalet. I wasn't really expecting to be running around the rest of the map. So I ran out of meds, and we were getting like plinked at, and I was stuck in the top section, and my painkillers ran out, so I couldn't jump up out of the usual exit. And I had a broken leg, so I was like, well, I'm just screwed here. I just can't leave. So we like moved out of the little spot, just like spewing gear down the mountain. I had like Semi-Better M4 with a voodoo on it going down the hill, like armor, helmet, just pouring down the mountain. And no one shot at us. Nobody at all. We staggered our way across the mountain, like plopped down a few little bits, and then walked through the main road, completely unhindered by any players at all, and all scavs, just like straight through, breathing heavily, like with like limping along with like no painkillers, bleeding profusely all over the street. Right, we go up to the lower chalet. There's nobody there. We like go around and start looting some stuff, like find some meds, like find a like whole ibuprofen bottle. I was just like, man, we're killing it now. We managed to find an RD 704 and an MCX. So then there were like a bunch of scouts down on the main sort of road, and we went down there, and there was like a couple of scouts to kill because we were starting to run out of energy. So I went down to try and kill them, but then unfortunately I took like 762 PS through the eye socket when I tried to kill them. But it was glorious. We spent so long like re-gearing up because a lot of people were like, oh, you should just leave, and I was like, why though? Like I've got like an MCX and an RD, like yeah, fine, but like all the rest of my gear is just out in the street. Like I'm gonna get that back in insurance probably. Like I don't have anything on me. Like we may as well just try to turn this into like a hero raid. Well, the idea was to go down, kill the scavs, get some food from them to like replenish our like supply, then go and loot the guy that we originally killed that we were gonna try and loot.
You're
like,
this far in, right?
Yeah, we may as well give it a go. So
and
unfortunately, we're trying to fight with like a stock MCX and a stock RD with like there's a stock RD with like 10 bullets in it and a stock MC I've like 762 FMJ and a stock MCX with I don't know, God knows what inside it, some horrible whisper or something.
Yeah,
but with like 15 bullets. And I had found one holographic between the two of them, like one of the really like scuffed ones. We were trying to use like a stock MCX to fight scavs at like middling distances. It's just like, oh man. So yeah, I mean maybe we could have done it, but I don't know. Anyway, it was by far the most fun raid that we actually had on that day, bizarrely, even though we ended up, dying again. But it's just like so many people on that map is just crazy. Lighthouse is it's a real crazy one. So, oh man.
You reminded me of something I was talking about a few weeks ago, which was I was mentioning like, oh yeah, there was this one quest that you needed to do on Lighthouse that was like really important. I couldn't remember what it was, and now I remember. It is for the rubber butt pad for the Mo, the skier missing cargo, because you have to do a long road to get to that. And God, I don't know about you, but long road for me has like just been like one of those tasks that I do not enjoy doing because it's like feels like you get like 1 to 2 scavs a raid. It's just like so, unless you just and that's like you're sitting there for like 40 minutes, because I don't know. It feels like they don't respawn that well, or I don't know. Maybe multiple people are doing the quest as well. I don't know, but that quest, ugh.
No, it is pretty gross. I think it's just because AI scavs, they just get picked off so quickly and so easily down there. So like the initial wave just get destroyed immediately, and then you can get like 3 later on. But like you're kind of relying on player scavs just like beelining it into the road camp and just sitting on the hills, but. Eventually, if you're just sat there too long, you'll just get shot at by another PMC. So it's tough. Like long road just takes a while. I just kind of let it happen. I try to be purposeful about checking, and then every raid I'm trying to kill some scouts down there. But usually you're best off if you just start over on that side and you go to try and like pick off the first couple of waves of scavs. But it's hard. I normally don't bother with that one. Like I haven't done that one this wipe yet. I think because there's another route, right? You could do there's a peacekeeper quest, I think, for the pad.
Yes. Well. No, you have to complete Gunsmith Part 20.
Yeah, and get Peacekeeper 4. So I have it because of that.
Okay.
But I haven't done Missing Cargo.
The problem with that is it's a problem, but I guess not a big problem, is you need like the butt pad for a few different builds, not mistaken, for Gunsmith, like prior
I think it helps.
to this.
I don't think you necessarily need it, but you can, I mean, if you really need it, you can always go and get it from the SOT mod barter if you really want it.
The infamous
Mechanic 2 SOT mod barter.
Yeah.
For 2 pro kills. Honestly, it's great. Like if you like, so I've now done something new, which is I've got the top layers of stash of things which is like a wish list of stuff, and I just check them and I see whether any of these things need to be, a cheap or whatever.
Yeah.
Like people sell pro kills sometimes for under 60k, and I bought like a bunch of them. I bought loads of them. So if you can buy pro kills for, I think it's, if you buy pro kills for 60,000 rubles, you could buy the SOP mod barter for 120k.
Yeah.
But it sells back to mechanic for like 129. If you take off the, or even, maybe even more than that, maybe 132 or something. If you take off the pad, it sells for like 122 or something. So if you could get pro kills for 60k, you can get the FDE plus the pad for free.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. So I got like 10 of them now. Yeah, I've been looking around for all these things, like waiting until Keck tapes are cheap, because then you can craft the emergency waters, so that then you can get Solewas for 12,000 rubles, which is the same as a car kit. So that's actually pretty cool. That's like a new min max that I've been doing recently. Actually doing like the ones that just auto make money every cycle, like the vodkas for Ash 12, the MCB, and wires for the other Ash 12. Those both make money now. The dog tag case from Jaeger, that makes money using the VHS. So doing those, and then it's just like there's loads of stuff now I'm just kind of like looking out for all the time. And like for SJ6s as well. So you've got like the saline and then hydrogen peroxides. You get 2 salines. If you can, sometimes like normally they're 20k. So usually it's 2 of them, that's 40, and then one hydrogen peroxide, which is another 10. So it's usually about 50. But sometimes they go down to like 12,000, 13,000 rubles. So that's like, and then the H2O2 sometimes go to like 7k. So sometimes you can get them for 30,000 for an SJ6, which is crazy. So I've just been like doing that, but you only get 1 per reset, right? And the same thing with the G-Phone X's. If you get G-Phone X's for 30,000, you can get Voodoos for 60k because you need 2 of them. But you can only get 1 per reset. So you just have to be diligent about like every reset, just like every time you're on, just like check it again.
Yeah, every time you get out of raid, check your traders and see which one's reset. And then,
Because it's like with the SOPMOD one, I was using the Elcan a bit recently. But with the Voodoo barter, I've just kind of stopped. Like, I don't know, it's not that much. Like 70k. Like when they're like 140k for a Razor and 130k for a Voodoo, you're like, ooh, like it's a lot. But when you could do the barter and get it for 70, like I don't feel at this point, like when I'm level 41 now, I don't feel that 70k is actually that much to get the top tier optic, especially with the guns I'm kind of pairing it with, I feel like that's sort of in line. Like I don't necessarily want to use the Elcan. The Elcan is fine, but the Voodoo is just so much better for full auto guns. Like you just never lose sight picture. It's one of those things, the Elcan's just not that great for full auto. It's all right. Better than some. Some are terrible, right? TAC 30 is like awful, for example.
Yeah, TAC 30 is absolutely the worst.
But yeah, like the Voodoo is just you just never lose sight picture. It's got an absolutely enormous reticle on it. 6 times. Well, it's not actually 6. It's like slightly more or something. But the 1x is like huge, and you can fight easily in CQB with the 1 times, like no problem. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, it is pretty great.
That's what I've been up to. Oh, and also creating presets. Like every time I go and make a preset, so I'm trying to do the investment work in making the presets properly. Once they're set up now, and I have them set up for things like customs, you can just like fly through it. Like once you've got your keys set up in the way that you want for the different cases, you can literally just fly through setting up something. So you just go like, I'm going to go to customs. I press the sit case one, and I pull the sit case out. I'd like press the one for my magazines, pull that out. Press the one for consumables, pull that out. Then I just pick my kit, which would be gun, armor, helmet, headset, balaclava, rig, and then I just transfer all the stuff onto my character, and boom, I'm ready to go. Like it's so fast if you know what you want to set up. It's like really, really quick. But every time I do it, like every time I'm like going through the setup process, people are like, "Oh, this doesn't look worth it. Oh, this looks crazy. Oh, I'd be way quicker just doing it myself." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know, because this is the first time I'm having to do it, right? But like, I'm never going to have to do this again.
I
just do it once." Yeah, you do the legwork, and it's like you were talking about with like your files or whatever. Like, exactly. You can, every single time you can like search for your stuff, but like if you've got it all laid out in like nice folders or whatever, then it's easier. And you also have to practice doing it. Like as some people have said on my stream, they're like, "Oh, I just have too much muscle memory and doing it the old way." And it's like that's fair, if you don't want to invest in it, then that's okay. If you're, it's like mountain tops. Like the presets mountain is up here, and the old mountain is up here. But when you're at the top, it feels bad to like have to walk all the way down the mountain to walk all the way back up the new one to reach a new peak. It's tricky, but that's what we're doing. We're climbing to new heights. That's where we're doing it. I've got loads now. I've got so many presets.
Yeah, I can't wait to find out if they reset them or not.
Oh no, honestly, that will be horrible. If they do that, that's actually going to be really, really nasty.
Well, Giga, I got news for you.
Oh, I know. They're probably going to do it. Like, I've got one. This is even like there's one that's amazing, right? There's one preset that I absolutely love, and it's you go to get the magazine case craft in the
Okay.
hideout, right? You need 4 bolts and 4 nuts. They turn over really,
Sure.
really quickly on the flea market. So half the time you're like click yes, click yes, click yes, click yes, click yes, and it's just like you don't really like the prices are always pretty much always decent. You just want to buy them, right? And you go click yes, oh no, click oh it's already been bought. Oh click no, it's already been bought. Oh yeah, oh no, now you've got to solve a captcha, and it's like the most frustrating thing ever. I have a preset which is just a burkut, and it's 4 bolts and 4 screws. Or 4 nuts, and that's it. And what you do is you press go.
Oh my
because I already have a burkut, it doesn't make me buy the burkut, right? And you press. What you do is you go refresh, purchase all yes, and it goes bam, and it buys all 4 bolts, all 4 nuts.
Holy
no captures, no reset, no weird stuff. It's so good, dude.
Dude, that's so giga-brained.
It's so good.
That's so giga-brained.
I've been trying to set up loads of ones like that are good. Like I've got a whole one which buys it buys 4 fleece hats. It buys 2 M6 whatever grenades and a smoke grenade. It buys like one bandage, 1 AI2, and 1 ibuprofen. It buys a golden star and an augmentin and whatever. Like all the stuff you need for the basic ones to do like 1 cycle each in each station. And I make sure that the prices aren't stupid. Like fleece hats haven't sold out and they're not 50k each, something like that. And then you go refresh, bam, purchase all. And then poof, it just fills the front of your inventory. And then you can just go around crafting stuff without having to right click filter, click yes. Right, oh, that's sold. Oh, do a capture. Oh, right, next one, right click filter, yes, click. Yeah, no, click filter, yes, click. Dude, it takes freaking ages. People underestimate how long it takes. So to just buy all that stuff in one go is crazy good.
So
I've been investing in these things. It's awesome.
You could have like an attack 2 and like whatever the biggest rig. And the sole purpose is to like buy all these barter items off the flea. So then like you could log on, have like a master, call it like trader crafting cycle, and you equip that preset. It buys all your nuts, bolts, wires, vodkas, whatever, and then now you just go through your rounds through the hideout and traders and you get all your barters and everything in one go.
Yeah. Do you know what the best part about it is?
What?
Is that when you try to do the preset, it says you don't have these things available.
Right.
Would you like? So if you do have the stuff already, it'll equip it. But like almost always, you don't actually have the stuff available, right? So it'll say, you don't have these things. Would you like to buy them? And you say yes, and then it brings up the screen to buy them all simultaneously. Yeah. And then you just go purchase all yes, and then you just never equip it. So it just goes in your inventory. You don't the preset never goes on your character, so you don't even need to screw up your like main character either.
Yeah.
It's only if you did just so happen to have all those things, but it's like it's pretty unlikely.
This is getting to the point where like BSG needs to just let us take control of the console, and we just make scripts and do like execute script 69. Just like you see your menu just like flicking, chanting, buying stuff, trading. It's just like you just press one button.
18,000 rubles. Yes, go. Yes, like full logic trees. Like,
that's like a game in of itself, man. Oh my god, the game of like optimizing, creating a system, what would you call protocol, a procedural system that grabs all the stuff for you while you go make your coffee and come back and play Tarkov. It's just funny.
Exactly. No, it's good. It's good. As much as all of that is wonderful, we should probably dive into the first topic, shouldn't
we? Dude, I'm still kind of like giga-brained, blown by that barter
I love
trick.
that kind
That's
of
really
stuff.
cool. Yeah.
I love all that kind of stuff. Like, you know what? Like, if there's anything that I'm good at in life, it's that kind of thing. That type of thing is the thing that I am good at doing. Out of all things, it's like looking at systems, not necessarily like designing systems, but like looking at systems, finding the like inefficiencies, or just like the sort of like the minimum viable path to get what you want. Like the easiest route. Like that's the thing. I've always been quite good at that kind of thing, and I love doing it. It's like the best thing for me. I just love it, and it's so satisfying when it comes off, and people are like, "Oh, no way!" And I'm just like, "Yeah, look what you can do! It's crazy." I love it. I just love it so much. Such a nerd.
I love it too. All right, yes. On to the next topic here. We'll be starting with ammo.
Yeah,
in-game ammo. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I think so. So this is kind of like this is sort of the thread But once you start pulling this, everything
Sure.
else just kind of comes out, right? And you could kind of talk about endgame ammo in any particular way, but I think it's most pertinent to stick to BP, because BP is like, it's the one that's probably the most contentious. It's the one that has been moved around the most. It's had the most changes to it. We've experienced it in so many different formats. Like, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like BP is more contentious than M61 in a lot of ways. Like M61, you just die, but you can't really full auto it. Like, it's hard to full auto that thing. It does become like problematic at the end game, but like you can't really go pre-fasten with M61. Like you can, like with the 762 MDR, but like it's just not as popular as people using like Mutant or RD with BP with a drum in it. It's just a different vibe, you know. And BP has historically been more accessible as well. Like it's always either been cheaper, it's been earlier, it's, you know, it's just in guns with lower recoil. Like 762 by 39 has lower recoil than 762 by 51, kind of by just default. It's just the way it is. And guns in that caliber has always been pretty good. So BP is kind of like our case study for endgame ammo. And the reason why this has come like round and round and round is because, you know, previously, like back in the day, you just needed to do Punisher 6 and then you could buy BP.
Right.
And then once people realized it was really the easiest way to just kill everybody, because as a reminder, BP will 50% of the time, it will two-shot someone wearing class 5 to the thorax. That is incredibly strong. Like it hits the perfect breakpoints that if it doesn't, it does enough damage on the first shot. Well, actually, no, that's not even true. Like, because it's got 47 pen, it's like a 60% chance or something to go through on the first hit, I think. Oh, sorry, no. So it's like 55% to go through on the first hit.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And so it's like, it's pretty much like 50-50,
Right.
whether they die or not. It might even be slightly more. I can't remember. I think it's about 50-50 though, from when I last looked. And if it doesn't, then it's a 3-shot is basically inevitable. So it's like incredibly strong. And because the class 6 has always been, you know, unless you're talking about like the slick meta, which hasn't been around for a while, like since fleet restrictions or whatever, and hardly anyone uses class 6 now. So BP is like an incredibly powerful round. So previously it was like Punisher 6, and then you could get BP. And then it got changed, so it was behind Grenadier instead, which is like much more annoying. But obviously a bunch of people just did it, and then that was that. Then last wipe it got changed. Or was it even the wipe before? I can't remember. It was changed so that it was like craft only. You couldn't buy it on the traders anymore. But it was at Workbench 3 and it took an eternity.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And now this wipe, the craft is gone and you can only buy it on the trader. But you have to be level 45, basically.
Right.
So BP's like gone round and round in different circles because like, and so many people talk about it's like, when it was craft only, like the guys who play a lot and like do the chatting thing, they would complain because it takes so long to make the ammo in the Workbench. I mean, I do kind of get it, right? Like they proportionately for the number of raids they get far less BP than that players that play less raids. Because if you only play like 3 raids a day, you can craft BP like non-stop and probably use it non-stop. If you play like 20 raids a day, you still only get the same amount of BP.
Right,
and that's with the trader cycles thing, like you're only, other than people who are like working from home, which is like slightly different. But like if you're only on for the time that you're playing, usually people just are there for the trader cycles that they're there for, right? But now with this huge time gating, it becomes more of a time resource than anything else. And so like I get it for those guys. It's annoying having that gated in that way. But now that it's been changed to be level 45, I mean, I don't really know. I can't remember quite how many players get to level 45 in a wipe. Like we've looked at it previously, like probably only 50% of people get to 42, I think. And 42 to 45 is quite a stretch. I mean, I'd have to go back and like look at a poll that I did, but like no, a lot of players don't ever make it to even max traders.
Yeah.
And 42 to 45 is hard because that's the grind until just before you get the daily quests that give you loads of XP. So that happens at 46. So 42 to 45 is a real slog, like an extreme slog. So I imagine that there's quite a big difference between players getting to 42 and 45 even, honestly, because 42 at least it's max traders, whatever, and then people don't really care anymore. So trying to stretch those extra 3 levels is hard. And so the issue now is those players who don't get to that level will never be able to use BP unless they find it in raid, which is really quite rare now because it's not on raiders anymore or rogues because it was so problematic in general. So that's been removed. So it's like, oh, what, you're relying on world spawns for BP? Like, okay, maybe, but it's not the same. Whereas the Chad guys can get it every reset because they get to level 45 and the quest is easy. So it's tricky, really. And like the both sides of it seem to be at each other. And in my opinion, we should just have both. I don't see why one set of work is more invalid than the other, right? Like if you want to grind and you want to spend a ton of hours in the game, you want to get to level 45, and maybe they could even put it behind a harder quest. Like, I don't know, maybe make it higher level, whatever. Then you get access to it like relatively freely. There's still individual limits, fine, but you have access to it relatively freely. If you can't do that or don't want to do that, you can still get it, but then there's going to be limitations, right? You have to maybe stack it with PS because you don't have as much because you're doing it with the craft. Like it's more expensive, blah blah blah. But like it's still a choice that you can make if you want to do it. And that basically says like both types of work are okay if you want to spend the time in the hideout for going other stuff that you could be making money, but you're willing to go for the extra time versus grinding the game out. I just feel like that kind of mentality could work for more ammos, honestly. It's like M61 can't be crafted until you do Shooter Born in Heaven anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe you could be able to buy it if you were like level 50 or something. Like I don't think that necessarily breaks the game. Like the number of people who get to 45 plus, it's not that high. And those people would probably just kill you anyway, even without BP. So I don't think people should worry. But I do think removing it, like people should be able to access it in the craft, I think, if you're, because you need to be level 30, I guess, to do Workbench 3. That's a minimum. So if that's like your end game, level 30 plus.
Which is like enough. What? Mechanic 32 or 34?
Well, it's Mechanic 3 at 30, yeah.
30, okay.
Yeah. And so, yeah, if that's your end game and that's what you want to do, then fine. I think that's enough of a gate for those people. But it's like, yeah, you're going to have to manage the ammo quantity and like stack it with PS, whatever. Mm-hmm. And players who play like that are probably used to playing that way and are probably okay with it, I would imagine. If you're more like casual or whatever, then you're going to be more careful about your kits and things. So you kind of like, I feel like that caters to both sides. Like we've switched from craft only to trader only, and now it's like, now it's swung the other way. So now nobody who's getting to level 45 can ever get BP. It's like just kind of strange.
Yeah. Man, there's a lot to say because I mean, in many ways, a lot has changed because I think historically, well, at least when I was playing, BP really wasn't that great. Like it was good, but it was all about M995, M61. I mean, these are back in the day. Even like BP for the VSS and Val. Like it was like okay because you could like build like an kind of okay AKM and like kind of okay AK-103, but like they didn't scale as well into the late game as like the M4 did. The VSS was just like naturally good and you could run it stock. You could like kit it out for Val, but HK was really prevalent back then. So a lot's changed, like the RD came in, the mutant came in. They took away M995, moved it to like craft only. The ammo bans came to flea market. Like the landscapes changed a lot. And so, subsequently the balancing's got to like kind of adapt around that. And, the effort BSG made to like completely eradicate a lot of high-end ammo from like traders, somebody just feels kind of weird to bring it back with this BP, but maybe they have a particular thing, a balance they're trying to achieve here. I can't really say. We have our own critiques of some of the balancing on some of the ammos and other places, like namely the 300 blackouts balancing feels a little wonky, but feels a little underpowered, if you will. Like it needs a bit of a availability buff. But I mean, as far as my thoughts go, I don't know, man. I like the idea, the sentiment that you propose. So I think it makes sense. I obviously, I think it goes without saying, the terminally online Tarkov gamers, as I was, many a times, we quite enjoy the, in a roundabout way, perhaps. We really like the availability of the traders because every 4 hours you just buy all the ammos you can, and then you never have to worry about running a different gun or like not having good ammo to use. Typically, if you run out, it's like fine, I'll just use a different gun with also good ammo, like APSX, for example. So it's tricky, I would say, but I and it really depends on, like in the case you brought up with M61. Let's say they brought that back on the trader. Let's say it's Peacekeeper 4 or whatever. It's like, okay, well, how much is it going to cost and how much can you buy per reset? Because if you can buy like 900 per reset, then like, oh, okay, I don't know if that's so. It really comes down. The devil's in the details of a lot of these things, I would say. I don't know. I mean, I'm still kind of on the thought process of let's put, which they've done to their credit, they have done a good job. This wipe in particular, I'm pretty sure that was this wipe where they like introduce various ammos into these ammo boxes, whereas previously that really wasn't utilized.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good thing because now instead of constantly looting useless, 9x18 or 19 ammo and, crappy 545 by 39 rounds, and then the only good stuff was like, 545 by 39 and like Mosin rounds. You could get like BT or SNB was pretty common. So now that you have these full, looks like they've done I don't know how much they've done, but it looks like a lot of it's in there. Like you can just find boxes of M80, boxes of AP, the MP7 caliber ammo, all types of stuff. You could probably find 7 and 39 for a box of it, not just like a loose stack. So that's really helped increase the availability in the raid, and I would prefer more of a push towards that, to where it's kind of a, I just feel like it's more exciting to loot something in the raid in that instance versus grinding up to like level 45 and getting it constantly and consistently. It's just a little less. I mean, granted, if you're gonna find something good, you're probably either gonna use it or B, like put in your container to use it later, which is fine. I mean, you've done some legwork, but I don't know, man. It's like I said, the devil's in the details. But that's kind of my preference. Is I would just like, let's get rid of like the crappy, like I don't need PST GZH in the raid. Like I really don't. You know what I mean?
You'd
like,
rather it just didn't spawn.
I'd rather it just didn't spawn. Just don't even spawn it. Like replace, instead of that, increase the AP 6.3 loophole by whatever. You know what I mean? Like just make it scale a little bit better. Because like after the first week of wipe, like the majority of all of that stuff is just like mostly irrelevant. I mean, not, you know what I mean? Like the value just drops so much. So like the fact that it's taken up that, that spawn throughout the entire wipe is just kind of like, why not just remove it in the first place? Because then it's going to be at the start wipe. It's going to be even more exciting when you find that AP 6.3. It's like, oh my god, this mid tier ammo that I got at the start of wipe. It's like now it's like you feel like you got way more. Your power level just increased. I like that.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it's one of those things where I feel that, I don't know whether this is true or not, but I feel that like ammo spawns in Tarkov are just like, they're just ammo spawns. I don't think there are any high val, medium value, low value. I don't think that exists in the loot pool. So they probably should do that really. I don't feel like you can't necessarily do all these things. Like to be able to specifically craft an ammo that you want and it takes ages, or to grind like something hard to get to one specific ammo that you want, and then also to have it in the raid as well. Like I think all those things can like exist in tandem. But probably. I do wish that there were things like, you had to go into Kibba to get like the high loot spawn. Like, maybe you have the chance of getting it in the medium one, or maybe not in the low, but you have to like at least, I don't know, because it's about distribution. Like I don't necessarily just want to find 762 PP one raid, Lapua FMJ the next raid. Like I almost feel like you don't want it to be like super targeted, but you kind of almost want things like, this is a high value Eastern ammo spawn, or this is a high value Western ammo spawn. So like, if I go, I might get 51 NATO, I might get Lapua, I might get 556. Or if I go for this other one, I might get 760 by 39, I might get 545, and sort of segregate it out that way. So it's not so specific, but I feel that right now it's a little bit like the whole like, I'm going to try to farm armor in raid. That just means I just need to hit stashes and just hope. Because there's no like, it might be a packet, it might be nothing, it might be a slick, you just don't know. There's like no differentiation. I feel like there needs to be some kind of like tiering of the ammo and of types maybe in different areas. I don't know how they could do that, but even things like the USEC room on, maybe different maps. I don't know, maybe like reserve is full of like all Russian spawns, whatever. And like maybe there's some NATO stuff, I don't know. But and then you have to go. Maybe you have to go Lighthouse for some NATO things, or split it up, make it in different areas. You've got like different parts of. Maybe some part of reserve that's got different areas. So just make it sensible. Make it so that you can actually go to somewhere to do the thing to get the ammo. You almost have to. That's almost like a worthy loot run to do, and it needs to be. Yeah, you don't want it to be like, oh, you farm here and you get like MAIAP every single raid when you go. This is like a fixed spawn, but you want people to go somewhere to try and do some targeted farming, even if you don't get it every time. I think. I feel like that would be better.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a good point. And I could totally see a system like they kind of have something already in place. Like, you brought reserve, and I feel like a lot of the spawns there are like Russian. Like they could definitely stick to that theme. Like I was thinking of the USEC camp on Woods. Like you could spawn NATO stuff there.
Yeah,
but kind of in like a grander scale. Like you could think your ammo caches, the little like brown wooden boxes. They're just like, they can spawn anything and everything, right? And that's kind of like your low tier spawn. Like you're just taking your chances, right? And then
like it is now, I guess.
Pretty well much, yeah. I mean, maybe you
up
keep
bit,
the what's that?
Maybe you up the spawn rate of the good stuff a little bit.
Yeah. I agree. You got to be careful with the whole cash farming meta because I do like the idea of like I'm loading into raid. I brought this kit and I'm targeting this type of loot because we already kind of have that. If you load in, I need CPU fans. I'm going to loot PC blocks.
Yeah.
And I think a similar thing could apply with like ammo and gear. I'm loading into interchange. I'm going to hit Kiba to get high. That's like the high tier ammo armor spawn. I'm loading into Woods. I have an M4. I'm going to go to USEC camp to loot this, I think they could do something like that.
That makes sense. Yeah. So I think that's like broadly where I'd like the game to go on that. I don't think there's really anything else to say about that particularly. The only other part about the whole ammo situation is the global limits thing, which has become kind of a hot topic. Like I've almost been making more of a noise about this, to be honest, because like I tried to buy the ammo case from Mechanic, and it was just like impossible. There's like I think there's 800 or something, or maybe 500. I can't remember. And I was there for the trader reset. We've talked about it a million times. That sitting and waiting for the trader, and then you go on the flea because it's faster than the actual trader itself, and you and then a good one for them, bam, and then you manage to buy one. And it's like a lot of people just not been able to buy one. If you're not there, like literally in the first second, it's just all gone, which is extremely annoying. But the same happens for ammo. Like FMJ is for the MP7, FMJSX is just like sold out permanently on Peacekeeper at all times because the MP7 is basically like as all the other SMGs have just been falling and falling and falling for various reasons. Like you have to craft it only, like you can't buy it on the flea, blah 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 blah. For ammos, what I'm talking about in particular. The MP7 and FMJ has just continued to be available at Peacekeeper 3, and it's by far the best of those ammos that you can buy anyway. And the MP7 is one of the best guns that you can put it in. And that one is still available on the traders. Don't have to craft it. I think you could even buy it on the flea market in theory, but it's sold out from Peacekeeper almost instantaneously. So, I mean, whether it should be there or not is kind of another question. But because I personally feel that the other ammos have just been over nerfed, right? Like to make them craft only, it's way too much, and it always was. Like you don't get enough from them. It costs too much. It's too expensive. Like you never see the P90 now. Like the P90 trades on the flea at like the trade sale value, as do the military cables to actually do the barter. Like the P90 is just never seen. I've seen the SR2M a little bit. That's probably the second best SMG, I would say, because the ammo, like you can get some ammo that's actually good. Like one's 35 penny, there's 38 or something. I think like it's not terrible. I think it's PE. I can't remember. No, maybe not PE. Maybe it's. Well, I can't remember what it's called, whichever the ammos are. So it's the second best one anyway, because BT you have to craft. BT might even be 39. Anyway, but the MP7 is just like standout and still is. But yeah, the global limits thing is just like, it just sucks so much. Like global limits are just terrible. And everybody seems to agree. It's actually one of the few things that I've seen on Twitter as people agreeing, right? There's a thread with Deadly Slob, which I'll probably talk about in a minute, but in that, like him and Tiggs had a conversation, and like both of them agreed that the global limits are stupid. And the thing about global limits, I know why they're there. I think we know why they're there, right? We understand why. BSG wants to have a scarcity driven economy,
Yeah.
and you can't buy everything that you want at all times. That's fine, but global limits is not it. It's not it, and not in the way that it's done, because the emergent player behavior that we always talk about is obviously camping the trader. Because if you're there every time, you basically get your allocation every time. If you play like a normal human being, you just never get that ammo ever. And that's not like, is that really what they want to achieve? Like people setting timers and logging in and buying stuff from the trader, like it's just terrible. So there needs to be a better way. And I actually can't really think of a great system. Like the only thing that I've thought of is things like you can queue up, like say you can queue one purchase from a trader at any one time. You only get one across all the traders. You can queue up for one purchase, whatever that purchase may be. And next reset, you get it, irrespective of limits. Like basically, it allocates out those purchases to everybody, and then the limits begin. Right, that's probably the least impactful way that they could do it. So if you really do want to run the MP7 and get FMJ, you can queue for that, and at least you can get that one thing. I don't know whether that would break elsewhere. Like maybe it would break if you were trying to do, I don't know, maybe if you were doing the Bitcoin BART or something. But again, it's only one per reset. Like it's really not that big of a deal. There'd probably be a meta around there. But the flea market prices for the inputs would go up. So I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't really have a great solution for it. That's the only thing that I could think if they want to keep the existing system and do something else to allow people to actually at least like do something. But some kind of queuing system would make sense to me. In some way, in some fashion. I can't really design a good system for it, but they need to. And if they can't, we just need to delete it for now. Like it really doesn't do enough it doesn't add enough like interest to the game to be worth having it there. Like the downside is so high. Like personal limits is honestly enough, I think, in almost all cases. Like it's just so frustrating to have these like trader limits on, and especially things like the ammo box. It's like, what are you really trying to achieve here by limiting people the ammo box craft? Like, yeah, so now barter. So now people now have to, but not barter, the cash purchase. So now people have to like do the barter, which costs like 450k, or buy it from the fleet, which costs 450k. Whereas the actual purchase is like 150k. It's just a tax on people that aren't permanently online of 300,000 rubles. Like, what's that about? Like, it's so bad.
No, that's a good way of looking at it. Sorry to cut you off. Yeah, then I like that analogy. It's just a tax to people who aren't always at their PC, done at the time. And I don't think that's not doing any favors for anybody. You know what I mean? No. So I still think, I mean, this is not an easy thing, but conceptually, I like the idea of global limits. I see what they're trying to do, right? But I think the problem arises is because it's static. Like, I just don't think it's possible for anyone to constantly tweak and adjust and guess the right amount to have the right balance at every time. So I'd suggest having it to where it's dynamic and it fluctuates based off some type of data, it's again, this is not an easy task, but imagine if it sells out, right? The global limits sell out, and then the system says, okay, it sold out, I need to increase my global limits, whatever, blah blah. And then it does that, keeps doing that, et cetera, until it finds a sweet spot. And then the counter to that would be, it's like, which this is something that's a problem for barters. You'd have to like be very creative around this, but you could also do the counter. The opposite of that would be like, okay, it tries to distinguish, is it availability issue or is it a monetary issue? Does it need to be cheaper? Does it need to be more expensive? And then the other thing I thought is like, you sort of set ranges within this described system. Like, for example, let's say the trader mechanic, because he houses the barter, right? Let's say you allocate him like 50 million rubles, okay? And he uses those 50 million rubles to acquire all of his stock, right? And so he has to work within that limitation of acquiring his stock for the limits, but he's also going to say he's trying to min-max his own fake purchases, right? His own business. So he's going to like if there's a trend of people, there's a demand for his what you call it, like the ammo barter, then he's gonna like naturally increase. He's like, okay, I need to order more, you know. But how can you make this profitable for him? Like, still work within this 50 million range, something to this extent. You know, it's like a half cooked thought here, very much so. But I would like that a lot, because then it like, okay, it removes, like, I can still feel the value of engage with the game in like a meaningful way. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, yeah, like now it's way more interesting because the market's going this way, and now suddenly the stock for this is like more, and it's, you know, also more expensive, but the stock for these other items are now lower and they're also cheaper or whatever, you know. So it's like it adapts with the market trend in a certain way, and I think that's way more not only realistic, but it's like way more engaging and then just this static flat thing. Because yeah, it's just like they could increase the stock, and they keep increasing the stock. They say do it every update. They're just like, okay, we're gonna live update, increase the stock. Eventually, they're gonna reach a point where it's like it's not an issue anymore. And at that point, why even have the global stock limits, right?
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
So there's got to be something. Either they just need to scrap the idea, or they need to go really like try to do something to make it engaging and meaningful. Whether that's, you know, machine learning, calculating, you know, data or whatever, or personal limits. So I think personal limits is like a fairly okay solution. It's not as interesting. You know, it's basically just putting brakes on every player, irregardless of market factors. But it's something that now it's like at least you can guarantee to get the item. And there's some items like Black Key Card, for example. You really only need one, but the barter sells out instantly. So like, if you're guaranteed to get one, it's like, why even have a limit? You know what I mean? There's just some things where it's just like it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's like a couple of things to this as well. For a start, and I can't imagine that this would necessarily be all that difficult. Or I say that, but you know, in theory, this stuff isn't necessarily that difficult. The barters and the stocks in general, or the stocks of all the things actually, they should scale based upon the active player base.
Yeah.
The number of like people who are on at the moment, because that doesn't happen right now. So often you can buy stuff in like APAC or like EU hours.
Yeah.
You can't buy in NA because the number of players, like you just look at the Twitch viewership metrics, right? Like the number of people playing during NA hours is just like so much higher. It's like you know, early afternoon for everybody in the States, and it's like evening for everyone here. So it's like EU plus US both place at the same time in certain periods, and it's just like huge pinch points on the system, which is completely static. It doesn't take into account player base whatsoever. So for a start, it should do that. Secondly, they should decide what their actual goal is with the limits. Like, what do they actually want? Do they want it to sell out sometimes and people not be able to access it? Or, because to me, there's two ways of doing it. You can either have some kind of algorithm that sees whether the global limit's sold out. It decides when this global limit's sold out, and it adds more to the amount. And obviously, with our dynamic scaling thing, that would kind of help. But it adds more to the amount until it only sells out, let's say, halfway through a trader reset. So it just keeps iterating until it gets the number that it sells out to like halfway through. So if you get there like 50% of the time, like, you know, most people don't keep track of when the traders reset. But if you got it to a sweet spot like that, it means that half the time you got there, it would be in stock. Half the time you got there, it wouldn't be in stock. And that would actually kind of alleviate the issue. So you'd have to basically just say, oh, okay, it sold out within 1 second. All right, we need to do, we need to do like, 50 more. Okay, it sold out within 1 second. Okay, we need to do 50 more. And then it just keep iterating until eventually you get to the point, okay, so it took an hour for it to sell out. Okay, add another bit. Okay, it took an hour and a half. Oh, no, it takes, and that's perfect because it's like halfway through the trader reset. Fine. And then if that went with the flare base as well, then it should roughly be about right. Something like that. The other way that you could do it is say, okay, well, these limits, we want these limits to be extremely scarce. We only want so many players to be able to get this stuff. So you have a different algorithm which basically says every time it sells out, you add 50 to the price until only half of it sells. Right. So I don't know what that would do. That sounds like much more chaotic to me. You end up with FMJ being like, 5,000 rubles a piece because people would still buy it. Like some of them would probably be in such high demand that people would just buy them anyway. That sounds a lot more chaotic, but that's like another route that you could do to say like we make the price get higher until eventually it only sells out halfway through the trader reset, for example. And then let the market decide basically. Like it just increments it by you can go tiny, you can go like incremented by 5 or something every time. 5 rubles or whatever. Like there's enough like cycles per day on Tarkov for it eventually to work, I think. Depending on the item. So that's like another way of doing it, I suppose. But yeah, right now it's like purely static with no reflection on the player base at all. Like even stupid items like, as you say, black keycard, or it's not like people are like cycling through and buying black keycard every single raid. I mean, maybe they're worried about RMT on that one. I don't know, but yeah, it's just either. I think global limits just either needs to go, just stick it to personal limits, or they need to put some radically different system in place to allow you to actually, have a reasonable chance of getting this stuff. Like it's fine to have some scarcity, but this way is silly. Like having to trade a camp for it is just ridiculous. That's the thing. Like if you can make a mechanic where like half the time it's in stock, you wouldn't feel as compelled to sit there and be like desperately there as soon as the trade reset. You were like, oh, it's resetting in half hour. Like I can play a raid. Like it'll be available for the next 20 minutes after I get back as well. So like, if a really important ammo is like resetting in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I'll be like, I'll probably just play scav and then make sure I get out because I need to be there. I'll like not play PMC specifically to go and get that reset. Like it's so bad. Like people play around it and it's just awful. Whereas if you knew that you would have time, there'd be an hour before it ran out. That'd be much better. So yeah. Needs to be that something like that. Otherwise just get rid of it.
Yeah, the two things I'll say. One is one reason why I like hideout crafts over like trader selling stuff is because it is more dynamic. In that the crafts take inputs and it will accept non-found and raid inputs, which means you can buy the items off the flea, which means if BP is in demand, then so obviously the components will be more valued, right? So the sell for more. So it kind of there is some static, like the crafts itself, the inputs itself, those are going to remain static, right? It's always going to be 2 greens and what is it, like 2 greens and
BP now? Oh no, sorry.
What it used to be.
What it used to be, because now it's PP. It's like now it's 3 greens, 3 blues.
Okay. Oh wow, yeah.
And 120
it used to be
PS.
2.
I know it used to be a lot less.
They tweaked it, yeah. So like, yeah, I and you can make the stuff. There's like a floor and a ceiling with the tax. The floor is the traders, but I think that's a better way because it is, it has some limiters, but it is more fluctuating than the static price. So I prefer that more. And then the other thing I would say is like going back to the algorithm idea. If you had, let's say I'm a businessman, right? I have resources, limited amount of resources to buy the things, to produce the goods, to then sell them, right? So I'm trying to make a profit. If something is in high demand, it's like I need to buy more stock, but I need to get more stock, but that's going to cost me more resources. So like I need to up the price as well. So I think I liked your idea, but also, or, instead of like, because you're right, it does very much depend on what BSG want to do. Like if there's certain items that they say, hey, we do not want people buying this, we want it to be sold out more often than not, then that's fine. And then there's some items where that's not the case, right? It's like fine if like SKSs go up to like 2 million, for example. But if the goal is like we just want the trader to really tax everyone equally, let's say, like really price gouge people out or whatever, because that would honestly, the more I think about that would be kind of crazy. Like let's say BP, right, was like just the thing. Let's hypothetically, all right, hypotheticals. Let's say BP was on level 1 trader. All right, whatever. Nothing else. All right. So like BP is just like in crazy demand, right? So Mechanic realizes this, and or whoever Papper, and he was like, "Holy shit! Like I need to order more BP. I need to jack up the price." And meanwhile, all the other guns like the SKSs, the AKs, the thing that takes the BP, he's getting less and less stock of those because he's just like throwing all the BP in there, and then eventually, the demand for the AKs will go up. You know what I mean? But like all the other stuff, like that he sells, like I don't know, Karan maybe. Like the stock's really less for that. The prices drop, but like people aren't buying. Like you could just see how like this thing could be pretty rampant. Where it's like, if it's like a true, capitalist free market way, it's just like you could imagine like where PACAs are like the global limit's like 3 because no one's buying them. So Little Billy logs in, and I guess he's the only one buying them. But you know what I mean? It's just like. There's definitely potential for stuff to be really crazy. You probably need to put some safeguards, but I would love just to see what no safeguards would look like. It'd be the Wild West, baby.
Yeah, it would be interesting. There's so many cool ways you could do it dynamically. Like I didn't even really think about like having the traders, they've got an amount of money and they like allocate it all to BP or whatever eventually because it's the most profitable thing for them. Like you give them some profit algorithm, whatever, and then they stop selling packers to the Tibbies because it's like, oh, you're not profitable to me, right? So F you, I'm selling BP at 220,000 rubles to, Chadas McChadki over here.
Yeah. It can be wild. Madness.
Yeah, interesting. So I think that's ammo.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's ammo. There wasn't too much. I think, other than like in the public eye, I think other than Glorious and Tiggs both agree. That's not Glorious. God, I've just got different people all on the brains. Too many creators. We've got Deadly Slob and Tiggs both agreeing that global limits should go. I think that's pretty much a resounding, because like Deadly Slob's pretty much usually like the old school kind of, we've been through, and we'll see actually, we've been through this stuff before, blah blah blah. Like we can't just go back to the old ways because there were issues, which we're kind of going to come on to now. But I think that's basically everyone pretty much agrees that something needs to change there. Now, finding raid is obviously a bit more complicated, which is the next like main topic. And this all like restarted. Like this has been like bubbling along under the surface since the last time, but it all kind of like resurfaced again. And I've been on Twitter way more than I honestly should be over the past week. But it all resurfaced because of a Glorious E post he made, which was where he basically said, hot take, make PvP rewarding again, maybe remove the fan raid system, but only apply it to quest items. Still time for the game to change since it's still in beta, or maybe remove the flea market restrictions so we can actually buy whatever we want. Give me your thoughts, everyone, because gear fear has taken over so many people. The precursor to this, which I thought was really great, actually, is there was tons of people have been talking about like ratting and stuff. It's all kind of related, but somebody posted and wrote like, so I haven't played in a minute. Did they change Pika's advantage or something? Why is everyone playing slow? And Glorious basically just replied and just said, nothing changed. It's just what the meta is, which I was like, I love Glorious. It's like so straight talking. But it's interesting that this question has like come back around again because this was kind of we talked about this not 6 months ago, I don't think. And
you did a video on it, right?
I did a video on it and proposing some kind of solution. And I spent like 5 hours talking to people on my own Discord about it, trying to like brainstorm ideas and like. I didn't come up with the perfect solution, but it was the beginning at least, and so I feel like I've got a pretty good framework, or like I've at least thought it through very, very strongly, which is a good foundation for coming into a discussion like this. And I posted here and a few other places. I'm probably just like annoying people at this point, but I've posted a few times like removing Find Raid on its own reintroduces hatch links. It allows trader items to get flipped again on the flea market, and it shortens the wipe cycle. Any new solution needs to cover these bases, right? And a lot of people. I don't know, well, not a lot of people, but like some people feel when I'm talking about this kind of thing that I'm somehow like defending Find Raid. And I think like I couldn't bring myself to go back through our old cast to find it, but I have never really liked Find Raid that much.
Yeah. I think that's pretty I think we've both been pretty critical of Find Raid.
Yeah, like I like the outcomes that it's brought.
Right, absolutely.
Because it does fix those things. And then there was, so it's like, and buying through quests is another one that I usually like leave off because it's kind of, that's sort of like, people say like finding, like like Gloria said, right, find a raid system, but only apply it to quest items. That's usually people give that caveat. So that's why I normally don't include that one, because like that one's just covered pretty easily. It's like, oh, just keep finding raid on quest items. Then that solves that problem, right? So it's like it's a very, very easy one to solve. But people talk about removing finding raid, and you have to figure out a way of like getting rid of these other problems, because hatchlings were so annoying at one point. You know, you'd have like half the raid made up by hatchlings, and it just makes the game incredibly boring because there's nobody there to actually play the game in a real way. You just like kill a hatchling, but he's got a Ledex in his butt already, and he dies, and that's it. That's just the end of it. Like you have to somehow fix the whole trader flipping thing. Like that's easy said than done.
Yeah,
but I think I
that's
came up
true.
with a good solution for that, which was like having another tag. And like, yeah, you can cheese it by
Yeah.
going in like sniping into raids on unpopulated times and servers with your friends and swapping gear and stuff. Like, yeah, maybe you can do that. That's fine. But in the discussions that I've had with people about that, it's like it shouldn't really be worth it. And in all the solutions that I've proposed, like one thing that I don't think we should ever do is get rid of the flea market restrictions. I think the flea market bans, they actually fix a lot of stuff. They're actually for, because I do say like shortening the wipe cycle for Friday Raid, which is sort of true, but it's like Friday Raid is actually only a little piece of like fixing the short wipe cycle. Like the flea market bans actually fixes like 80% of the problems, and Finding Raid fixes 20. Because imagine you got rid of Finding Raid and somebody had a slick, you can't sell it on the flea anyway because the slick's banned on the flea. So there's two separate things. Like Finding Raid and flea bans are two separate things, and I actually don't think the game can take the flea bans being removed. Like you can fiddle around at the edges and maybe like add one thing or take another thing away. Like you could probably sell 5.6A1 on the flea now, and that would probably be fine. You could probably sell BT on the flea now, and that would probably be fine. Because of the way that they brought the ammo back to like level 16, level 15 anyway, it's basically around the same time as you get to the flea, so it wouldn't break anything. But should you be able to sell BP on the flea? Like hell no. Should you be able to sell slicks on the flea? No. Like Altins? No. Like that's just not, I don't think that's ever gonna work. You're never going to be able to balance that properly, and it's always going to cause like huge problems. So the shortening wipe cycle thing, actually, I think if you keep the flea bans there, like say you kill somebody and they've got a trooper on, like that's fine, honestly, because you can buy that on the fleet anyway. Like yeah, it probably would increase or decrease the price of them, but I don't think class 4 armor is necessarily an issue in of itself. You can defeat class 4 armor pretty readily. And if you wanted to relax stuff, I honestly think every class 4 armor could be allowed on the flea. Actually, I don't see the reason why a lot of the rigs aren't allowed. There's like the A18, like some of the ones we talked about, like in the previous cast, like recently about some of the class 4s that just never bought, like A18 and stuff. Like sometimes you find them on like Rashalla's guards and things, but they're not allowed on the flea, so you can't buy them. And it's really odd. So I think that'll be fine. But like keep class 5 and class 6 banned, keep all the guns that are banned at the moment banned, keep all the ammo that's on there banned at the moment. But yeah, I think honestly the biggest problem is the hatchlings thing. And one thing that's confused me is in part of the discussions that I was having, I think it was actually Tiggs who was like, oh, well, the hatchlings thing has been solved ages ago, but BSG won't do it, which is locking the container. But part of their argument about like finding raid being so bad is because people can't like secure an item away and then go into PvP, so they have to leave a raid straight away. But locking the container, it does that, but worse.
Yeah.
Like beforehand, you could grab a GPU, put it in your ass, and then go and fight in PvP. And if you die, you still have it.
Yeah.
Now, if you do that, you can still use the GPU yourself. It's just not as valuable as it used to be. If you lock the container, that GPU is in your bag. Like it actually makes that worse than anything else. So, and this is the thing. I actually think like the hatchlings problem is almost one of the hardest things to fix out of the whole finding way thing. Because like my solution wasn't really that great. It was like scavs stationed around the areas and like and a sort of a time to add stuff to your secure container. Like you can still put stuff in, but like it's on a timer. I don't know. Like the only other solutions that seem like kind of okay is like you alter the run through mechanic so that if you don't get a run through, so you get enough XP, you don't get a run through, your stuff is still fine in raid. So you have like a die run through and a non-die run through. That's the only way that I could see to fix it. But like fundamentally, like we spoke probably for a whole cast about this, and it all depends on whether you think that should even be a thing and whether you think that's symptomatic of the problem. I kind of feel that like the finding raid and the inability to keep a GPU in your butt while you go fight, I don't think that's necessarily the biggest problem with fighting, and we'll come on to that in a bit. But I don't actually necessarily think that will fix everything. Like giving people the ability, even though I built it as part of my structure, right, to allow people to die with stuff in their secure container and sell it on the flea. I don't actually know how much that would help after like a lot of reflection. after making the video and hearing all the feedback and thinking about it for 6 months, I don't know whether that would necessarily incentivize people to fight more and make PvP more dynamic and whatever. I don't necessarily think it would.
Blocking
I
the
know there's a lot
container.
to unpack. Yeah, or even no, allowing people to put stuff in the container and have them die with it. I don't think it would necessarily even fix people wanting to fight, and
Depends.
it depends on your viewpoint as to whether you even think that needs to be fixed. Honestly, I know there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. I guess one thing I would say is it really just is going to come down to what type of game, BSG wants / what people want. Because, like, I totally agree. If you lock the container, you are going to incentivize people to play safe, like to prioritize survival. I mean, don't get me wrong. Okay, when I was playing back in the day when Foundry wasn't a thing and you could flip GPUs that you shoved in your butt, it was a great feeling going interchange, rushing into a store, grabbing a GPU. It's like, okay, let's go chase gunshots now. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
because you're literally your kit is paid for. Like, it feels as if you're on a scav raid at that point. Which is fine for like action, but like to me, like for me, I like Tarkov for the intensity of it. Like the found and raid scenario where I found the LEDX, right? It's like I need to survive to make this count as like a win.
yeah,
And it's like when you get into those situations where your survival is being threatened, it is very intense. And to sort of put this into perspective, I feel that, I've definitely been in this case. And I feel that a lot of the influencers who talk, often talk about this topic of Found and Raid are sort of numb to the intensity of Tarkov, right? I mean, they play the game constantly. I mean, it's their job, essentially. They're typically very high skilled, right? Because they play the game so much. And they actually are not often that challenged. So they have to sort of make the game challenging by going for like these 1v3s, these weird, goofy things, strategies, builds and stuff. To sort of like get that intensity. And I've felt that in my play too, early on is like I wanted to actively fight 3 people and it was like very, intense. But it's sort of like replacing that feeling and some of that like weird enjoyment that I was losing with Tarkov. And I was trying to like figure out why am I not enjoying the game? It's like, is it X? Is it the flea market? Whatever. But anyways, so putting that perspective, I just think like it's a survival game first and foremost. So we should just I understand like I like the container, like I like it conceptually. Obviously the part I don't like is the this idea of like having transforming your survivability into like meaningless, it's just like it's very like game breaking,
Yeah.
Like just think of like Rust or Daisy if you had a container there, just like change like Daisy I can't really think of. I don't play Daisy a lot, but like Rust, oh my god, it would be so like it would just completely changes the game. Some of the like crazy game breaking stuff you could do. So I don't know. It's just like it's a tough thing, but that's what I like about Tarkov. I like the intensity, so I want. Don't get me wrong, I like the action and combat too, but first and foremost, I enjoy the intensity. So like if they want to do the combat intensity, I personally say Arena is going to be that, right?
Yeah.
So why, let's keep the game first and foremost about survival. And like that's essentially why Found and Raid was put in the first place, because people were literally completing the game by going in, pressing F on their quest item and disconnecting and turning it in. It's just like that's not like that's come on guys.
Exactly. That's not the way that it was ever designed, right? And that again, it takes the intensity away too.
Mm-hmm.
It short circuits what is supposed to happen with these things, and it short circuits the intensity. And so it's, yeah, you can complete the stuff that way, but like it's not enjoyable, and it robs the player who's playing in the correct way, like the easiest way, of the experience of playing the way that it was intended. That's the thing. Like if you could just get like infinite money glitch or whatever by pressing XYZ in the hideout, like people would do it, but it would ruin the game.
Yes.
And so the game shouldn't have infinite money glitch. Like it's an obvious like design argument like that.
And you said it exactly, is that it, like, more importantly, it ruins the experience for them. Like they're depriving themselves of the experience. I think that's the most important part.
Yes, and it's not even necessarily their fault. Like it's the game.
Oh,
it's the game and the game design's job to force the player into the experience that the game should be designed to have, not the player to not play the maximal maximal way to get the experience that they should be getting.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yep.
It's like it's on the game, not on the player to provide that experience. It's on the player to try to to fight against the game to get that experience in that way. Just to overcome the hurdles that the game puts in place. And if the game is designed in one way, you've got the game's designed with 10 things you need to jump over, but there's a track around the outside that you could just walk around. Well, people are going to walk around the track. They don't need to jump over the stuff and do all the crazy things. They're just going to walk around because it's the easy way. But to block off the track is what the game should be doing to make people actually engage in the actual game.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's just so hard to like solve all these things, and there's so many people who've like replied to various things on mine, just like, oh, why didn't they just do this? And I'm just like, yeah, well, that fixes this, but it doesn't fix that. Why don't they just do that? Yeah, well, that fixes the first one, doesn't fix number 2. Like, you need to come up with something that fixes it all. You can't just do it all. You can't just do it all. Somebody mentioned in chat Landmark's take, and I do actually have Landmark's post up because I thought it was interesting, at least. He said, increase trader buyback percentage on guns, ammo, attachments, armor, etc. to like 90% of the original purchase price. If they don't want to change the fleet, this makes looting from PvP way more valuable. Which is, interestingly, exactly what I suggested in my video, and I did it. Hey, there you go. Except I included the dog tags in there as well to be like 10 times the price, something like that. Like, yeah, maybe you can cheese it, whatever. And people are like, oh, but they could just get cheese it from teammates. And like, BSG have already made the dog tags from teammates 1. Like, yeah, you could snipe into each other's raids to get your dog tags that are worth like 80k. Like, is anyone gonna like? If people are gonna do that, like, whatever, you can just have your rubles. I don't care. Like, it doesn't affect the vast majority of people. And you have to like really try. You have to snipe into each other's raids. So you're not part of the same group. Like, I don't even know, make them find in raid or something. Whatever. But yeah, it's like it's such a small population, it just doesn't really matter. But anyway, so he said that. I agree with him. I've said it before. I think it's a good thing. BSG have already increased the amount the amount that traders buy back stuff for, actually. So it's not like, if you get an MMAC, you don't just sell it back for like 30k. It is a lot more now. It's like 60 or 70 or whatever. It is a lot better than it used to be, but it's still not where I think it should be. Like, the traders shouldn't take such a wide margin on that kind of thing, especially given that you can't. Like, it was more problematic before when you could just sell stuff freely from the flea market. You could just like store your gear in the flea for like a 10%, price whatever. Like the flea market prices never changed that much, so you could just sell all the things that you had and then just buy them when you needed them because the prices didn't fluctuate that much. Like, it's not really the same as that anymore because you have to buy from the traders for most parts with these high tier armors. They are getting quite expensive. And the traders' value now is like very wide compared to. It's less bad than it was, but it's quite wide compared to the original price for a lot of these things. But I do want to flip over to the other side of this, which is I bring back Deadly Slob again because he's old school OG and has a different mentality on this. Where he said, possible hot take. Tarkov's loot economy is the strongest it's ever been. Finding raid has been a net positive for the game. RMT, hatchet runs, questing progression was just wild. Content burnout was significant, and players complained constantly about ammo and armor. He said, the grass isn't greener on the other side. We played the game with open flea for a long time. The changes that happened to the market are consequences of problems that needed to be resolved. That being said, crafting times are dumb and should be changed, right? So he agrees that crafting takes too long for a lot of ammos. But he's right. And the thing, the most important part about the way that Deadly's worded it is finding raid has been a net positive for the game.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree. Do I like finding raid? Not really. Was it necessary? Yes. Did it solve the problems that it was designed to solve? It did. Do I like it? No.
Well,
so I think he's right. It's a net positive, but And that's the thing. We don't want to go back to those problems.
Yeah.
And any new solution needs to fix those problems before it can be used.
It fixed some problems. Well, yeah, I would say it fixed those problems and also introduced other problems, I think is another way of saying it. To sort of describe what that idea of like, it's a good thing, but we don't like it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that's it's pretty interesting. I think I think we both agree with his particular take. But I mean, there's also another side, and the problem with a lot of these arguments is because it's complicated. There's here's the whole about the conversation, and different conversations pick on this pocket, and then once people are like, oh, but then what about this bit? Oh, and then what about this bit? And what about this bit? And it's like, especially something like Twitter is just like not really the right forum for it, because the topic is too large and there's too many interconnected pieces that you never get like the full picture about what people are talking about. You need to like hone in on each thing and like take it on its own before you can put everything back together. And there's another piece that a lot of people reference to, which is important for the conversation at least, which is about RMT, because finding raid is also partly about RMT. It stops a hacker from going into raid, picking up a LEDX, leaving the raid with finding raid, going into a factory raid with some guy, going down to gate 3 or wherever, giving them the LEDX, both of them leaving, and the guy who's bought it off him selling it on the flea market. That is also partly what finding raid is for. This is its whole own other thing. This is complicated because, as we predicted, as you make flea market restrictions harder, as you make item limits harder on players, you can't transfer keys anymore. Finding raid means that you can't bring in loot and you have to just sell it to the traders. You see an increase in carry service, and carry services interact more strongly with the player base. Cheaters being in raids, hoovering up items with loot vacuum or whatever, or like even just speed hacks and running into resort. The impact that it has on the average gamer is that the map is like sparse of high value items.
Sure.
For the most part, that's like the biggest impact. That's very difficult to detect for the average player. Like it just seems like you're just never finding good stuff. Sometimes you still will because there's not a cheater in every raid, and but it's like it's almost impossible to detect, right? Because everyone's on their own little anecdotal experience.
Yeah.
The problem with carry service is that those people are like incentivized to be more aggressive towards players. They're kind of just like, well, they might get banned more. Fine, like they're going to go around the map and like hoover everything up. But what they do is they take a big bag, take their Timmy with them, hoover up all the loot, and then drop the bag for whoever is not cheating, right? So the player who's taking the carry service isn't cheating, so it's really hard to detect. They're not transferring items from one player's stash to another, so that's really hard to detect.
Yeah.
And so now like people are getting shot by carry service people all the time. I've seen it on Tiggs' stream actually. Like I know Tiggs complains a lot, but like I've seen him be shot by carry service people, and it's so obvious because there's like a guy with literally no gear and a dude decked out in like fast MT with the thingies, whatever, who like aim bots him from a million miles away with the tree bag on. Like it's the most obvious, blatant thing of all time. It does happen, and the problem with that is that it interacts much more strongly with the player base. But the argument is, right, and I know I'm talking a lot, but there's a lot to this whole like conversation in general. The argument is take finding raid away and take the restrictions away on the regular players, because that means that cheaters will then be able to go around hoovering loot up again, and then they won't have to bother us anymore. Which is kind of the argument. And as time is going on, I kind of feel like I'm getting there. Like BSG can't stop the hackers. They can't.
Right.
So allow people to transfer keys to each other anymore. Stop people being able to like not carry more than 2 beta bags on them at any one time. Like all of these things are really annoying for all the actual players. Do they stop RMT? Clearly not. We had high hopes when all this stuff came in the first place. It doesn't really change anything. All that happens is now people do carry service instead. Like there's ways of doing it always. So I'm starting to get into the point of just like you just and this is down on BSG. It's on BSG for detection. This is it. It's like BSG on their anti-cheat. And if they can't do it, then so be it, right? Let them loot vacuum the map up and sell RMT items to players. Like, as long as they leave regular people alone, then whatever. Like, I think the RMT battle has to be solved through the cheating battle. And I think it's time to accept that putting more restrictions on actual players hasn't worked and is just like detrimental to the player base. Honestly, I'm actually getting to that point now. I really am.
Yeah,
I don't know whether that's a hot take or not.
I mean, based question mark. I don't know. Me and a friend of mine had a discussion around like pretty much similar to this. Is like essentially the fountain rate is like really annoying, right? For like for the players engaging with it, right? It's like, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
can't sell this because it's not found rate, whatever. And it's like, is there anything like wrong per se with someone taking? I mean, yeah, it's just I don't know. It's so tricky because it's like you do this, and then it's like we're basically saying it's okay that people pay cheaters to get gear in an RMT. You know what I mean? Like that's fine because like we're allowing the thieves and whatnot to like thieves is probably not good, but we're allowing the criminals, so to speak, to do business as long as they don't do it in front of us, you know, as long as it's like behind, like it doesn't affect us directly, you know, but like
Yeah.
obviously indirectly it's affecting you because you know they're taking loot. It's just like you're not aware of it, right? And then they're transferring loot to other people, and like you know now they have. I don't know. It's just I mean I get it, but I think what this is ultimately is a battle of I don't know what you call it, like price gouging or like market gouging or like tariffs or something, but like BSG needs to tax the cheating service in like this market to where it's like not profitable. And the problem with that is for a you know, depending on your circumstances and context, it's going to be very profitable for you. Like if you're living in a country where the cost of living is very low, and the currency receiving dollars converts to 3-4 times into your currency, you're probably doing very well for yourself.
Yeah.
And added the benefit that you're playing a video game, it's like it's probably not a bad gig in some of these situations. So that's going to be really hard for them to directly, like, effectively tax these people to where it's like not profitable for them. Like it doesn't make any sense.
And I think one of the like big issues with it is that it's quite it's a difficult topic for BSG because BSG's angle on this is like, we're fighting the cheating battle as we always do. And we have all of these RMT restrictions in place to like do, and we're doing all we can.
Yeah.
Whereas this take is much more like you've lost the battle. And now you're just accepting the least worst situation. Like it's quite a big shift in mentality to do that. Like sort of. I mean, I say that, but it's sort of like that, right? Like you're basically having to accept some failings to wind back some of the things that you've done, right? But the thing is, like, they can still carry on with the actual like cheating. Like people who are doing carry servers are still cheating in the game, right? So there's still the possibility of going after those people who are cheating, going after people who are clearly doing RMT. I mean, I don't know how, but there's data analytics ways, right? Like they don't play in the way that an ordinary person plays Tarkov. So there's ways of detecting it. Whether they do a good job of that, I mean, that's up to you and whatever you think about, BSG's ability to do this kind of stuff, which I think a lot of people are, realistically quite limited in their belief about how they can solve these things versus like other developers or other software developers in other fields, even just because it's not really BSG's like. It's not their speciality. They're a small. They're not really indie anymore, but they're a small-ish studio
in like AA,
in a non-target location. So can they even get the people who have the expertise to deal with it? Like probably not. So maybe they need to be more realistic as well and like wind back some of these changes. I don't know. Like the more that I thought about it, and the more that I've just like read people's discussions about it and whatnot, I kind of understand where people are coming from. The one thing that I will say that is slightly different is that Glorious put another post up about hatchlings, basically saying, I would rather fight hatchlings in raid. Where did he say this? Do I still have on here? Oh yeah, I don't mind fighting hatchlings who grab the loot over dying to a carry service or a rage hacker, then sells my shit over eBay for $5. Now the problem that I find with that take is that I don't think those things are the same at all. I think like hatchlings is a container thing. Like they only so happen to be the same thing right now because of the way Finding Raid, like they're two. Finding Raid and all the RMT restrictions and stuff are the reason why there's the carry services there. But the fact that when you die with loot in your container, it's not fine in raid. That's the thing that deals with hatchlings. So like they're sort of coincidentally linked, but they don't have to be. They're only linked because of the way that the systems are designed right now. Like you could have those things separate. So there are, if you, I don't know. Let me think. If you removed, it's hard. There's sort of a correlation there. Like if you removed finding raid, then hatchlings would come back, but then RMT probably would go back to normal rather than doing like carry service. So for those, I just feel like they're like sort of coincidentally linked together rather than just.
So
you don't need to accept, if you take away finding raid, you don't need to accept hatchlings. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that yeah. But I guess what he's saying is that in the case that you do remove found in raid, he would much rather deal with hatchlings versus cheaters.
Yeah,
That's kind of what he's saying.
I guess it's sort of valid. You say you remove fine and raid, you keep the flea market restrictions. That stops the early game getting completely blown up. You keep quest items as
found in raid.
Well, basically everything's found in raid except for trader bought items, which has its own flag, and then you do nothing about hatchlings. That's what he's saying. So then the carry service goes away, but people are hatchet running again.
So, question: do people still hatchet run interchange and loot GPUs in your, or high value items? Do they put Linuxes in their butt in this
new model? I guess because we haven't done it. We haven't fixed the hatching problem. We've just left it. Or we alternatively lock the container. We do all this stuff and we lock the container and we say to hell with it, because that's like topic number 3 is the ratting meta, which I guess we'll come on to in a second. But like you could lock the container and that fixes hatchlings. It just means that people are more scared with their loot.
Yeah, which then
then impacts the ratting meta thing. The PvP, which is what all these guys want. So it's like these things are tied hand in hand. But like maybe you just do it. Maybe you say, do we think that people having GPUs in their butt actually matters that much? Do you want to fight the guy who's scared who has a GPU in his butt? Like, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't matter so much. Maybe other changes matter more.
Yeah.
Maybe other changes matter more.
If I may just comment on a few things. Back to the cheating discussion around this whole idea of removing found in raid to have the cheaters. You made a statement something about like BSG can't solve the problem, and I would say that it's not a solvable problem, right? It's not I think who was the guy? You remember when like Goat and One Peg and Veritas, they all had a chat with the guy the Riot dev that worked on the anti-cheat for Riot for Valorant. Do you remember that? Did you watch that?
I did watch. I think I watched half of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they were talking about like building it from scratch, right?
Well, I mean, it was
part of the game, and they got as many resources as they wanted. So
yeah, I mean, that's definitely was part discussion, but it was overall about like cheating and anti-cheats. And one of the things he said, or maybe someone asked him, but he basically said that like what's an acceptable percentage of cheating, and his response was like, well, there is no acceptable ideally, but realistically there is an acceptable number, right? And you try to like play for that, because you're just not going to. This is a very like cat and mouse game that we're talking about here. And he had some solutions where anyways, I won't get into it. It's a interesting video, kind of like shed light into that subject. But that's what I would say is like we're never going to like solve BSG or whatever. They're never going to solve this issue. The question is like, what are we gonna like? What's tolerable for us? And I would say, me personally, let's target the people like cheating, obviously, right? But there's this sort of like sub issue of Tarkov where we have this found in raid, this RMT, black market economy. And I would say let's target the buyers and not the sellers as much, because if you target the buyers, they're just gonna keep like whatever. It's like the cost of doing business. They get banned, whatever. They go buy another stolen account or steal account or whatever. Like it's the cost of doing business, because I'm assuming that it's people are doing this because it's profitable for them. That's my baseline assumption. So target the buyers, because they're going to be the ones out the most. Like my friends, I've said this before, but one of my we'll say friends of friends, he bought RMT back in the day when there was I'm pretty sure founder raid wasn't a thing. And essentially the story is, he came in late to the YP, he had like a really long work month or something, and he was like really bummed out, like he's gonna have to like catch up with us. And so he bought RMT, he bought like Red Rebel, Slit Stick, a gun and stuff, and he did it all through the market, if I recall. I know some of it was done through the market, but like he traded a bandage for like an M4 or something, like a Red Rebel, right? And he got banned, which presumably because BSG was tracking, they're logging something, right? I'm operating on a lot of assumptions here, but I'm assuming they're logging stuff. So he got banned based off, maybe it was the flea market transaction ID or whatever. Something was flagged. Maybe the seller was already on the list somewhere. I don't know, but he got banned. So what happened? He was out for like 3 or 6 months as a temp ban, and so, but he still wanted to play, so he had to buy a new account. So he literally he has 2 accounts. And he got the old one back, but he's like, not only did he buy his original account, now he bought RMT, which maybe was like $20-$30, I don't know. And then now he bought another account. So he's like, $199 in or whatever the total is. It's just like, for him, it's like, and has, to my knowledge, he hasn't done I don't know if he has, but I guess the point is like, he learned his lesson. You know what I mean? Like, so I just that's sort of my thought on the RMT, is like, think we should target the buyers, and perhaps maybe the whole carry thing is a bit targeted more towards the sellers. I don't know. I mean, I just don't know. That's my initial thought. And then
I don't even know how.
What was the other thing I was going to say? I don't remember. Slipped my mind. When that happens.
Well, should we move on to the current meta before we run out of time? Because
yeah,
I'm not even sure when we started. I don't know how long it is, because we spent quite a while setting up because of the new tech. But anyway, this kind of like feeds into what it's like quite a natural progression. I'm actually in the middle of doing a video about this. I actually do want to do some like a discussion video about it, because there's a lot to it and a lot of interesting things, and I wanted to wait until we did this talk just to flesh everything out, make sure that everything's kind of like in line. There's nothing I've forgotten. So like the ratting thing, that's what a lot of people are talking about like right now. You move, you die.
Yeah.
It's the phrase of the week, the phrase of the month. I think it's a Tiggs phrase actually, but it's interesting because like, as Gloria said, right, nothing has changed. It's just what the meta is. Like right hand peaks haven't changed. Like I speculated on Twitter that like maybe the networking had made a difference, because you can't peak as advantage somebody quite as much, but a lot of people are like, no, it just feels back the same way as it used to be. And I can't remember whether they like rolled, because they rolled some networking stuff back or whatever. So I don't know. I was speculating. I wasn't really like super strong about whether it is or not. I just wanted to see what people's thoughts were, and a lot of people said no. So I mean, we'll just take that for what it is for the time being. But the question is like, why are people scared to move? And I think it is partly just a psychology thing, the fact that everybody's saying it, and like that's the meta, that's just what happens. But after a lot of different conversations that I've had with lots of different people, like some people blame it on finding raid and the fact that you can't put stuff in your secure container, which as I said before, I don't think is necessarily the real answer. Like the fact that staying still gets you easier kills is kind of like one of my answers that I've given in the past, which is true, but like why is that the reason? And I think after going through lots of different like iterations of this, to speaking to tons of different people just across Twitter and seeing their responses and seeing their tweets, whatever, like I've got stuff from all sorts of people, which is kind of cool. I think I've sort of boiled it down in my mind to mostly the audio. And I think the headset audio changes that were made probably have made the biggest impact on this in general. There's other things, there's other factors, but I think audio may be the one. And who got me down this particular rabbit hole of stuff was Dan Exert, actually. On my tweet, I'm actually just going to find his now because I don't have it up for some reason. But he replied to me in the conversation that I was having with Hayes about like slow play meta. It was actually in the same one I was talking about with the networking thing. And he said, I think that there's an issue with dynamic range, largely due to ear protection having a strong compression. This reduces the difference in amplitude or audio volume between loud and quiet sounds, making it more difficult to judge the distance based on how loud something is. Some ear protection has stronger compression than others, resulting in a less precise dynamic range, which is harder to judge distance based on sound source volume. Ironically, I tend to find I play better in an Altin with the volume higher because of judging distance better, which was kind of interesting. And there was kind of like a counterpoint, sort of, from JDog, who was like, if you played the maps enough and memorized the sound cues, he basically said, I disagree. You can echolocate PMCs from a single footsteps if you know like the map and know which surface is where. And he thinks that the fact that Tarkov doesn't have silent movement is part of the problem. Now, he said like it's not even about our hearing distance, which is too far. And the reason why he said that was because I had originally said like, why is audio different now versus the way it has been in the past or in other games? And maybe because the audio range is so high, it makes people's location very indistinct, right? And the reason why that is, right? Say you hear somebody now and you're wearing contact 4s, somebody could legitimately be 110 meters away. So you've got 0.1 of a kilometer, a circle around you of where somebody, obviously it's directional, right? But like you've got a cone in front of you where somebody could be. That cone is absolutely enormous at the moment. And part of the problem is that that's the point at which people stop moving when they hear somebody else.
Yes.
So if you dramatically decrease the hearing range of people, or if you just, dramatically was the wrong word. I don't even need to say that. But if you decrease the hearing range of players will then actually have more accurate information on where people are. You can vary the range of the sound more strongly. Like the gradient is bigger. Think about this, right? Somebody's right next to you. They make this much sound. Try to do it on camera with a delay. This much sound. And then like at 110 meters, they make no sound. Well, if somebody's like, if you shorten the audio range, right? Look at the steepness of this line. It's like really shallow. If you then shorten the audio range down to here, well, now it's really obvious. If someone's close to you, they're super loud. If they're a little bit further away, like it drops off super quick, you know? And so the fact that the audio range is so long, I think actually propagates part of this issue because that's as you should, right? As soon as you hear another player, most people stop moving and just don't make any sound because if one player stops moving and the other doesn't, you're just giving away directional audio the whole time and you're just allowing yourself to just be killed as soon as the person sees you. They just track you with the audio until they see you and then you die because you don't know where they are because they're not making any sound at all. So shortening down that I think would actually help. And also it means that at the moment it's basically impossible to flank. Because the audio range is so loud, you can't actually flank properly and get to a new position without them just freaking hearing you the whole time. So there's no way to get an angle on somebody without them just, tracking or echolocating you, as JDog put, like echolocating you as you move around. And I think like the audio distance is honestly one of the big problems. Like the compression thing is an issue for hearing people at distance. It is hard. But the audio range is just wild now. I don't think it was this crazy before, but like since they changed the headsets, it's so mad now that you can hear somebody from so far away. It's mad. I think that is honestly one of the biggest issues.
I mean, I do feel like in general in Tarkov, it's sometimes weird, like you're sniping, and maybe this is just because of like elevation and how that works with audio, but you know, you're like sniping and then you can just like clear as day hear someone running like medium distance from you, like they're not far away, like sniping distance, but like maybe like the 80 meters range, they're like sprinting, and it sounds as if they're sprinting almost right next to you. You know what I mean? And I guess maybe now that's a lot more pronounced with the new audio, or sorry, the new headsets rework, which I find quite problematic. This idea of like it's like you're sprinting, and like I feel like I've had on streets happen recently. Like the guy is like, you know, I'm like in the building and then I just hear someone sprinting like across the street from me. You know, I just find that kind of like problematic.
Yeah.
Because he's like, this is the other issue, which and just there's so much to talk about. But like one of the things I find problematic as well is like the way the maps are in Tarkov and they're designed, and I feel like it's very intentional, is like you can be shot from like a million angles half the time. And so it is extremely difficult to move from one point to another. And there's variation in like people spawn and like where people want to go and stuff. Like it's very nerve wracking when you're first learning the game. It is very nerve wracking. Like you feel like you're gonna die at every turn, and eventually you sort of build this idea of like just sprinting from like open fields like to get or like wherever you're trying to go, like because you can't possibly clear every angle and without like like the great example I can think of is like D2. You open up the door into the like D2 looting area, like not the, I don't know, the big metal grate floors of like the little room in the back with the filing cabinets. You open up the door to that and it's like you're immediately exposed to like someone directly in front of you, and then if you try to go out, you could be shot from your left, the door's open, you could be shot from your right, anywhere up and down in between. It's just like it's a nightmare to try to clear. And then you got to go down in D2, which is also, once you get to the little servers, there could be a guy in this server rack. There could be a guy in that server rack. If you peek the one on the left, you get shot from the right. Like, there's so many instances where this is like the case in Tarkov. So it feels like you're incentivized to run from like cover to cover. Maybe you check this spot, that spot, but you have to like move quickly because the longer you linger, the longer you're exposed to all these various angles, right? But the problem with that becomes because you're running, now you are louder, and then people hear you who are walking from here to here, and they hear you, they stop, and it's like, oh well, this is just going to be a free kill because you're giving off a different information, that being audio, the guy sprinting. So I don't know. This is like, I think I mentioned like CS:GO or like Counter-Strike, like they have silent walking, and I think that's great because the game's like designed for like competitive play, and like not having that ability would just be like really hard to like do anything on the map, right? Like,
like CS is very different as well because it's like there's a round timer and it's short and there's one defending team. Like CS is quite a campy game because one team's on defense and one team's on offense, but like there's a timer that makes the people move, and without a way to move silently, like it's very, very difficult to attack. But we have silent movement in Tarkov too, right? Crouch walking is silent
now
if you use it right now, so you can do that.
But like this is the problem is like in CS you have limited angles, right? I mean, it's like it's designed in a very particular way, whereas like Tarkov is also designed in a way, but it's almost like counterintuitive. Like yes, you have limited resources, right? It's an objective based game, right? Talking about planting the fuse or whatever it's called. So you got 5v5, limited resources, only so many people can defend here, so people can defend here. You can try to like guess and stack. You can like rotate people based off what's happening in the match, right? But you could fake stuff and then sneak across the other side, but you're not like during that sneaking process, you have limited angles to cover. So like it's fine if someone is also ratting and covering a flank, There's this idea of like lurking where whether you're attacking or defending, you sort of like play like lurk, like slow walk aggressively deep in behind enemy lines, and then you like hold a position where you can like gather information or like potentially lurk all the way up to a flank behind enemy team. That's one of my favorite roles, and namely like Get Right for all the CS:GO nerds. I think he's like one of the best people at this thing. Anyways, that's kind of the issue. Is like, okay, well, it's like if you have an issue with the audio, just silent walk everywhere. It's like, well, that's not going to work because there's so many angles half the time. So I just feel like either way, you're kind of like in a catch-22. So I'm not really sure what the right solution is. Caveat being, you make it scale kind of as you're describing, where like it feels very not linear, but like flat. and then there's a certain point where it drops off and you can't hear him anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it just rapidly. It's like very. Again, it's like as you described. It's like here's your 100 meters. You can hear sprinting in this sound in this range, and it sounds vaguely the same volume with as long as I know with the 100 meters. But then it's like walking is like 60 meters or 30 meters or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, same volume and everything. And then silent walking, you just can't hear. Like, I think it would be more interesting if it was like, it's all volume based where like it scales. Because Tarkov has a lot of ambient noise. Mm-hmm. So then it becomes like a game of like, how much volume, instead of it being so like static, like I ADS, I'm exactly 30 meters away. He can't hear me. Whereas like it's a very cutoff, whereas like the volume plays, but like it's like 1%, and then if they're really close to you, it's like 100%, something more scalable, I guess.
Yeah, because it's not that varied right now. Like, I know when there was that weird clip I had on Streets where I thought some guy was in the stairwell, but he was actually like running towards me because I couldn't determine. I thought he was running round the stairwell like this, but he was actually running directly at me because he was occluded through a wall, or whatever. And when I put it into like Premiere, like each sort of like second or whatever as he was getting closer, it was like a single decibel higher. So like it did change, but it was so small. Like 1 decibel is not a lot.
Right.
And it was just it was so small between the guy being at the door versus being at my window. I couldn't tell in the moment. I just couldn't tell. Like, yeah, maybe if you had more experience, like maybe a more experienced player who plays a lot more than me could play. But like, I played a decent amount, so it's not like I don't play the game. Like, and I couldn't tell based on the map or whatever. And it's like, yeah, like as J-Dog says, you can echolocate people, but like when the audio is that weird, you get at those situations where, and because of the complexity of the maps, which is kind of what you alluded to, right? On CS, it's like, oh well, the guy can only be there.
That's another
because there's only one place to go, and Factory's kind of like that. That's one of the reasons why I quite like Factory, because when you hear stuff, you know where they're going to be. Because unless you're in the office, which can get a bit confusing sometimes, like there's not that many places they can be, so you know that they're going to be holding this angle, or they're going to be down glass corridor, or they're going to be here, there, or wherever. Whereas like on Streets, it's like, oh, well, they could be on any story of post office. Or outside my window, or in the corridor, or in the shop front on the other side, or like maybe even on the main street. Like maybe not, but like you know what I mean, right? It's like the map's so complicated that there's so many places. Like you hear the one piece of audio, and it could mean many different things, which is it's just a Tarkov thing because of the complexity. But it means that it needs to be more. There needs to be more graduations in the audio so you actually like figure out what's going on. But I don't know. I do feel that this whole thing has become about because of the audio. I'd be interested to go back and actually see like what the audio range was previously, because I do think it's a lot longer than it was with these active headsets, especially some of the better ones. I'm not sure. I think I've got somebody sent me Omni Actual's headset comparison, which I've been meaning to look at, and I actually have it up because I was like meaning to look at, and he did a video about it. But there's like a spreadsheet that he has, which basically shows, like I haven't even really read it, but it's, given we're talking about it, it's kind of interesting. It's like 70 kilograms running range in meters, 50 kilograms running range in meters, like unencumbered running range, that kind of thing, and running and walking. And it's like if you're running with, I know most people don't wear contact fours, but if you're running with like 70 kilos, you can be heard 91 meters away with contact force. Now, it doesn't say what his skill is here. I don't know what his skill levels are with perception, because that also makes a difference. But even something pretty ordinary like the M32s, like you can hear somebody running with like overweight at 50 kilos at 71 meters and hear them walking with no weight on at all at 53 meters.
Yeah, see that,
like,
I don't.
It's a really long way, man. It's so long.
That's. I guess based off what you said of the decibels increasing, they were increased by 1 as he approached. I guess that range needs to be widened. I would like it to be further away they are, it's more significant how lower the volume is, and the closer they get, it like rapidly increases. I don't know. This is such a tricky topic because there's so many. Tarkov is trying to be very complex, and sometimes not everything is always that complex. So then we got what, the compression, the EQ on the headsets, how they work, because they got compression, they got different EQ adjustments and curves based off the headsets to real life. There's all these different volume levels, whatever. Then you got the audio engine itself. Then you got the plugin being the what is it? Binaural. Is it Unity? Or no, whose is it? It's some VR company.
Oculus
Audio,
yeah.
They got the Oculus audio going into it. Then you got how the actual sound works in the game, with the distances that it probably draws, from a ray from one player, or like a linear line from one player, what volume percentage. Like, there's so many parts in here. And as you said, like the case of CS, the vertical side of things, like you don't really, like Dust 2, I'm sure most people are familiar with Dust 2. There's the catwalk that leads up to bomb site A, I believe. Yeah. And like there's only one spot you can be underneath it, which is the CT spawn. And if you're in that spawn and you hear someone walking in front of you or to your left and you're watching, I don't know, mid or whatever, like, that most likely they're above you, right? Like, it's because there's just a wall there, they don't really implement a lot of cases where someone can be directly above you or beneath you. If you look at the maps, like Mirage is a good example. There's like very few spots where that's the case, and then it's pretty obvious where they would be if you get that cue. Plus, they got Steam Audio in their own HTRF or binaural audio solution that works. So it's like, it's a really tricky thing, man. Overall, though, it's like the whole move or die. I kind of agree. You move, you die. But there's like so many reasons for that, and I think audio is probably the biggest one. Because
what do you think is the next one?
What do you mean the next one?
What do you think is the next most important thing? Like, what else outside of audio do you think is the reason for this? Do you think people are actually scared? Do you think people are like worried about cheaters? Because there's lots of things that are like often spoken about that I just think aren't necessarily true. Like, people are worried because, finding raid. Like, I don't think that's necessarily the reason why people are scared to move.
It can be very important, though. I mean, have you ever been in a situation where it's like you got something, like you're on the what comdufs, CMDFs?
Oh yeah,
at least part 2. How long have you been on that quest for?
Now, I mean, like, a couple of days or a couple of sessions, I suppose.
All right, so the next one you get, and it's gotta be found in a raid, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be pretty tense, right? Like, you don't want to have to do all this again. So like, you're probably gonna play more cautiously. Like, I've been in situations where it's like, it's so tense and I don't know what to do, where it's like, I'm just gonna sit here and pack mags. Or I'm gonna just sit here and like think for a minute. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
So it's like, I do feel like there's a bit of that. I don't know what's the most secondary contributing factor, because again, that's so like in the case that we described, it's so situational, right?
I know. Like, how often do we think that that's actually a thing, though? Like, if Finding Raid wasn't there and you could then have that CFDM in your butt and that you're not going to die with it, like, it's not going to lose Finding Raid, you can still hand in the quest. Like, how, like, does that matter most of the time? Like, are most raids like that? I guess you're questing or something, but like, you're trying to get, like, you're either like getting an item, trying to go for a marker. Like, some of the quests, if you die with them, they go anyway because they're not like they're not real items. So even getting rid of Finding Raid, like Pocket Watch, would still be problematic. Getting like the flash drive for Lightkeeper would still be the same because that's like not like a Finding Raid thing. Like, those quest items are their own thing. If you die, they go regardless. But lots of people have said like keep the quest items outside of in Finding Raid anyway for that like stress. So I don't know, man. It's
I can't really say, because like, think about inertia too, right? Inertia makes it really clunky to move. Weight adds to inertia. That's a new thing. I don't know. It's probably a large various factors. I think I've seen some people saying like the SVT is like affecting that a lot. Like, if you just run out and you just get 2-tapped all the time, which like maybe, I mean, I don't know. I can't really say what's the second confidently. What's the second?
Yeah, because like the SVT AVT thing also has an impact for sure. It's like we've always had ways of like ratting people. You could use like Magnum buck shotguns or whatever, right? There's like lots of different ways you can do that. OKS-23, there's I mean, even just like basic stuff, just like if you sit still and then you shoot someone with BT, they're probably going to die.
Mhm.
But the SVT AVT just gives people that ability much more consistently. It acts much more like a normal gun. It kills people in 2 shots. And like me and you were having a conversation the other day, like offline, where we were setting up all of this stuff, right, about BT ammo for the SVT and AVT, which the issue with the SVT is actually more now than it was then. Like it's not necessarily an OP gun, and it's probably still not an OP gun really, because there's lots of downsides to it. But it's the like best bang for buck for killing people who are geared. And as the average gear of the average player has gone up, and people are starting to use class 5, the fact that you can then buy, I mean, you do have to be Prep 4, but the fact that you can get like SNB, say, or BT for 762 by 54R means that the SVT
Right.
and the AVT, rather than like falling off or having some kind of constraint, like shotguns, you have to hit them in the legs, like there are some
Right.
specific constraints for that, or like shoot someone in the face with some rat gun, whatever it is. The SVT AVT can still just go straight through class 5
Yeah.
armor. So it's got the same TTK as it did against class 4. And before there was like a bunch of guns that were cheap that were just as good against class 4, but like to get through class 5, you have to kind of invest in like the higher, like the heavier hitting calibers to start with the more expensive guns, with lower recoil, with better bullets. But the SVT AVT just stays the same. It still just 2-taps everybody with class 5 if you're using the right ammo on it. And it's what you've talked about with the M61 Hunter thing. So you're like, okay, well, if the guy is like, well, yeah, it's just then easier to do that, but you obviously have to like catch people by surprise. But I don't know, like the only thing about this is it just makes me feel like, does that make people rat more? I guess maybe it gives people the tools to rat, whereas they didn't before. Like you'd have to set yourself up situationally for a Magnum buckshot type raid or whatever. Like you take quite a lot of downsides, or KS-23. Like you could do it, but you can kill geared people much more consistently with the SVT than you can with those other strategies. So I guess that's the thing. I guess that's the issue with it, I suppose. Do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think ultimately the kind of like doing a full circle here, the win condition is surviving, right? That's you spawn on one side of the map, you have to win, you have to go to the other side of the map and extract. So like if the meta is to camp, we'll say, then I think that's very counterintuitive to the game, because you have to move to like have a chance at winning. You know what I mean? Like you have to take some risks. So like it can't. I think on the flip side, like on one hand, it's like good to have these these like easily accessible kits that like are good for like punching up, and they have like some kind of gimmick, right? We'll say. But on the other hand, I think because you have to move, and like as discussed, I don't think silent walking is like a viable discussion, because there's going to be cases where situationally the right play, in my opinion, would be just to like sprint, just send it. It's like you just can't clear everything. Like it's the best you can do. So I think that if you're going to move, you need to have something to protect you, which would be armor, and you should also take a penalty in that you're like slower than someone else. But I guess this is a roundabout way of saying I do think that having these guns that can just like punch straight through armor, that are like cheap, because not only is the SVT like cheap, it's also its ammo is like you can just craft SM. Like I still can't believe you can craft SMB on Workbench 2. That still blows my mind that it's still there right now. Like I don't even think the craft's that expensive. It's like what, 2 reds?
It used to be so cheap that you could sell it back to mechanic and make money. I think you might still be able to.
Yeah, they really got to patch that, because I personally think that's like, I'm fine with them having an LPS. I think that's like a good limit, but and this Giga, this is only gonna get worse when they introduce hitbox zones, because now you're like even more susceptible. So I don't know, and maybe that's the Tarkov experience. You just gotta die, man. You move, you die. I mean, you play the game. I don't know. It's tricky, dude.
It's like back when we had. I don't know, it's just like I find it hard to correlate these. Other than this is why I've ended up pinning so much stuff on the audio, because I find it hard to correlate a lot of these other things with like people not wanting to move anywhere. I understand like people not bringing in gear because it's just like, well, why would I bring in gear when everyone has an SVT? That's fine, but that doesn't stop people from moving. You know, like, you can still move through the map, loot stuff, whatever. Like, there's no problem. The thing that seems to prevent that is audio, and I know I keep coming back to it, but
Yeah, I would say
the
that's
other
the
things is
number
like
one.
it's like, and maybe it's the two things that go hand in hand. It's like another thing that people are worried about going in geared because they feel like they're going to get killed by cheaters. So they're like, well, I don't want. It's like two things together. It's like I don't want to get killed by cheaters, and or these like really good bang for buck guns are in the game.
Yeah.
That I'm like, and because of the way that the game functions, you know, I'm like 50-50 against these guys, and if I win, I get a rat rig and an SVT, and if they lose, if I lose, they take my, you know, Reduce M plus like Meta M4
Right.
and a ULAC. Like, it's
Right.
really asymmetric. And then with the audio, these guys are now also like sat still as soon as they hear me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like those things combined.
Mm-hmm.
Like, removing the SVT, AVT wouldn't stop people from moving around the map.
Yeah, you're right.
And fixing the audio wouldn't stop people from using the SVT. So those two I feel like it's those two things like coming together for this wipe in particular.
Yeah.
It's like a deadly mix of stationary ratting with the ultimate new rat cannon. It's like the two two things that's got together and made something like incredibly toxic.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how I'm thinking about it.
I mean, yeah, the one other thing I would say is I do think that there is if you're chasing PvP, you know what I mean? You're like really, if you're mad that other people aren't doing what you're doing, it's like, you know, I just don't know. Like I'm trying to think how to say this without saying it and being a dick. I don't know, man. It's just like not everyone's playing at your level or at your like if you have like millions of rubles, it's like who really, like, you know, oh, you didn't get your PvP. I'm so sorry for you. It's like you're not guaranteed to get that. You know what I mean? It's just you didn't get your good PvP. You didn't have your, and I get it. Like I've been there, you know, it's like you play Shoreline, you're looking to fight a bunch of dudes, no one's there. It's like, oh, I just had to loot a LEDX and all these other items and got out. Like it was so boring. Oh, you know, or like you got into a fight and you got one tap. It's like, oh, that's lame. Or some guy was ratting in a corner. Like, yeah, it sucks, but I just don't think you're entitled to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not in Tarkov. It's just not a game for that necessarily. People play in all sorts of funny ways, and I think you maybe just got to accept that.
I think so, but I think there is some wiggle room to, because like I said, you have to move from point A to point B, and I just think that if you get into like a really heavy meta where no one, it's like you're really contradicting. It's like no one really wants to move because it's like you die so often. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of bad. So I feel like you need some give and take there. You know, we need namely, I think the audio to be a bit more scalable, more wider. That way, it's like it's not this weird game of like, because you said it, and I play like this too often. Is like I just walk from point A to point B as much as possible, because then you hear the guy sprinting in your direction. It's like, oh, okay, let me set up for an ambush. And it's like I was watching your stream actually yesterday. I was like, God damn, Giga's getting so many kills. You were like on reserve, like killing 3 guys back to back. You were just like, I think you even said like, I'm just gonna. I think you said the benefit of packing in mags is I can just hear people coming to me and get a free kill. Which, I mean, you're not wrong.
It's weird, right? It's like you only realize the power of it, like especially because I'm not really like a campy player. Like I'm not a Shift W player, but like I'm objective based. So I'm going in, I'm doing a thing, and I like 5 people as I'm moving around the map, right? And like I will stop if I hear somebody, obviously, but like I'm not gonna like sit in a tree and wait for someone. That just like isn't my game style. I just never have done that. And it's the reason why I don't really like I just don't really like sniping particularly. But the times where you do have to do that, and it happens on reserve a lot because the reserve is quite small, so people walk past you all the time. You realize the value of it, and you realize why it's so powerful. Because exactly like you were watching the other day, it's like I got absolutely like busted up. It was out of spawn, right? I run out of spawn. Somebody just like hoses me down with something right at the beginning. I was just like, oh my god! I'd have to like backpedal into cover with an adrenaline on. Then like the dude like pushes me or whatever. I like managed to like stem the bleeds and kill him. But then I've got to like CMS both legs. I've got to slaver up my whole body. I've got to repack all my mags. But that means I'm just going to sit stationary on the edge of the map near the beginning of the raid for, I don't know how long it takes to do the whole thing. Like, it takes a long time in Tarkov. You probably sat there for a good 2 minutes, I would say. And partway through that process, people just come walking past. And they don't hear you because like you're medding, which is like not very loud really, like compared to them like sprinting or walking. So you just like put the kit away and then just wait. And they want to pass, you kill them. And then you loot them, and then you carry on packing the next set of mags, and then someone else comes along because they heard some shots, or whatever. Then you kill them, and it's just like it's sort of almost chains. It like chains. I've had this twice on reserve actually, where like you kill one guy, but you get absolutely like brutalized. But if you didn't get shot like that, you just carry on walking around the map, and maybe you'd end up in a fair fight with the next guy. But because you were forced to sit there and repack for like 3 minutes, you just hear him walking.
Yeah,
and it shows you the power of just sitting in one place.
And that's my point. Is like, that guy had to make a choice to move. You know, maybe he could have went a different way, whatever. But like, he had so many angles to cover. He couldn't like. It was like going to be near impossible for him to check that specific spot where you were, because he's worried about, you know, this guy in the K buildings, this guy in Dome, this guy in this building shoot at me straight ahead of me. You know, past the fence. Like, he's got so many things to look at. It's just like, I think it needs like your. One thing that might work is like maybe they make your sound for medding loud for yourself, and you have the guy that's running, you know, it scales up as he gets closer, it gets louder and louder and louder, to the point where like you're doing an action like packing your mags or medding where you can't hear that well, plus the ambient noise. Plus he has to be like, I don't know what's reasonable, 30 meters sprinting, and then like it's like marginally audible, and then like it just ramps up as he gets closer, you know, that way it's like it's a little bit more a little more give and take there, you know. It's because it's hard, dude. Like, you have, sometimes you're just gonna die to a guy who heard you first, and there's really nothing you can do about it because you can't possibly check every angle, and that sucks.
Exactly.
One thing I did want to jump back to really quickly, because I remembered you know, this idea of like letting BSG, you know, basically like admit defeat, and we take in the fold of the RMTers, and just, you know, it's better that way. What's interesting about this take is you could take it another step further, where the, you know, evil capitalist mindset comes in, and it's like, well, we could, us BSG, if we're just going to allow them to do this, why don't we just do it ourselves? Like, we can just make money off this. Doesn't it make more sense for them just to like sell the same stuff but at a lower price point? Like, why don't we just do our own RMT at that point? You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe. The issue with RMT actually really isn't the RMT. Like, I don't think anybody really gives two craps whether like Timmy number 365 buys 2,000 rounds of BP. I don't think that actually matters. That doesn't really hurt the player base particularly. It's always been the people cheating to do it, to get the stuff. That's the issue. It's not really RMT. It's because RMT is like the outlet. RMT is the exit point for the cheating, and it's the cheating that's the issue. Like, give Timmy XYZ like a meta slick or whatever. Like, half the time you're probably going to kill him and take it. So you're probably going to end up like benefiting from these people because they're not actually that good at the game. That's why they're doing RMT in the first place. But it's the cheaters sourcing that's the issue. That's the thing. That's the reason why it's problematic.
So
but yes, I mean, they could, like,
BSG,
I mean, they could, right? But like, again, it's fine because it's bannable. So it's one of those things where you're not supposed to do it, and there's a risk of being banned for it. So that really limits the appeal of people who are going to do it. Like, if you just had to, like, because it breaks the game if you actually just do it like openly. Like, yeah, BSG could just do it on the black market, and like no one would ever know.
No,
set up their own RMT firm. But you mean like doing it officially, like having in-game store or whatever?
Like Blizzard, Diablo 3.
Because that would break the game completely. Because then you'd feel compelled to do RMT, as opposed to like at the moment where it's like some kind of shady thing that you're not really supposed to do. I mean, like, you might get caught for it, and people are scared. Like,
you saw the cheaters, right? They're out. They no longer can cheat for RMT, right? You just cut them out, basically, right? Because that's the biggest complaint, right? Is they're cheating.
So what we're deciding on now is a trade-off between the game being RMT,
right?
In like inherently, versus cheaters, and you're reducing your cheater population to rage hackers, which happens in
Yeah.
all the other games, by the way, anyway. So, Tarkov's just got these extra incentives for this RMT situation. So you probably wouldn't get rid of all the cheaters. It'd probably be less because people wouldn't be cheating for RMT, but people would still be rage cheating. You're just breaking the economic link for like the RMT part. But like, given that it happens, I would normally have said to you like, yeah, that sounds like a good solution. But given the fact that it's happening in all the other games with no economic loop for it, then it probably won't make any difference. You're probably still going to have cheaters and ruin the game because now everyone feels like they have to buy BP.
I mean, we're not trying to eliminate cheaters. I don't think that's possible. No matter what you do, it's just what is going to be. What is the percentage, or what are you able to tolerate? And so to me, it's like this idea of like, let the RMTers, let them do their thing, right? At that point, you really, if like you accept that, you really open the door to like, well, why doesn't BSG just like, they have every incentive to just like cut them out? Like, they make more money, they deal with a population of cheater. Like, it's kind of a win-win, right? So like, I say all that to say is like, I feel like that mindset's like, you could go like really, dark into that area, but I think that you're sort of like playing in that mindset. And I would say like, it's better for them to keep fighting the good fight. You know what I mean? Like, they have reduced RMT, so that's a win for cheating and for like the player base, right? Because like you and I would agree, like we don't want $5 to get your slick now. Like that kind of defeats the purpose of the game, right? So there's a little bit of both. There's like, yes, we don't want cheaters, but also we do value a certain experience that the game's trying to give us. Like we want to like protect that.
Yeah.
So it's
I know you're playing devil's advocate, but it's like I just think there's a big difference between you open up Tarkov and it's just like today's sale $3 for 2,000 BP versus like having to go on your eBay and like trade it with some dodgy dude and PayPal him in like Bitcoin or whatever it is that you need to do to get it to where, to be fair, it's not even that dodgy. You just pay someone on eBay, I think, to do it. But I just think it's such a different like mindset and mentality. But it comes back to like the people's points about what's the least worst situation? Well, you're not going to get rid of cheaters. Okay, fine. We don't want RMT actually in the game inherently. Fine. So, okay, we'll just let the guys who are running the RMT businesses, like we don't really want them developing cheats for rage hacking. Actually, we kind of want them more developing cheats so that people use them to scour the map for loot to sell for RMT rather than actually fighting our player base. We'd actually rather them go and just take the items and trying to not be caught and trying to just take the items to use in RMT to sell to make money, as opposed to actually fighting our legitimate players. Because that's like, it's actually more obvious that there's a cheater problem when people are doing carry service or rage hacking versus doing RMT. RMT is actually like, although it's kind of insidious, you can't really tell as a player that it's going on because you don't see the loot because it's not there. You just think that, it could just be a spawn rate thing, right? Like you can't tell as an individual player. So I think that's where people's arguments coming from, which I actually am sort of subscribing to, as I said, which is that like you can't get rid of them, so you may as well just go for like the least worst option. And it's a totally different thing between RMT being like bannable offense versus it being sponsored by the company. Like it changes the game. It would completely obliterate Tarkov. It would, like, no one would play anymore. It would ruin the game totally.
Oh yeah, I mean it would definitely change the landscape vastly.
And I think that tells you that there's a difference between the two, right? And that's why they couldn't ever do it. And I understand the argument that you're sort of devil's advocating for, but that it's just not the same.
I mean, surface level is not the same. I feel like the end product is like I don't know.
I just find it because of who it's coming from, right?
Yeah, the source is different, but like and like if I was BSG, if this was the move, that like this is what the people want to find, is like, to me, I could not be tempted to myself to be like, well, I can eliminate, like, I'm just letting this business operate. They're cheating, they're ruining the experience for gamers, because like it's bound that if someone comes, if you're running to get the LEDX or whatever and the cheater's there too, if you're trying to kill them, like he's gonna shoot at you, you know what I mean? Like you're bound, it's bound to affect somebody. So like I just feel like it makes sense to be like, buy your Tarkov points and exchange them 60 for a slick. It just kind of makes sense to me. But
But it's about the experience too, as you say, right? It's about the experience that's intended. Like the argument that you're making is like Activision building an in-game hack so that all players can hack.
No, not necessarily, because we're not. We're saying that what we're saying is RMT is a part of the Tarkov experience. When
Okay.
we say
Well, I mean,
we want BSG to allow RMT, we're saying we're okay with RMT.
well, that's a fundamental flaw in the assumption then, because like BSG will never be okay with RMT.
But that's what people want, right? They want to allow RMT to happen.
They don't
Right?
want to allow RMT to happen. They want to stop carry services from shooting them in raid.
By allowing RMT to happen.
Partly, yes. Partly, yes.
That's my point.
It's an unfortunate consequence.
That's my point, is like, if BSG were to get to that point, to me, the inevitable conclusion is BSG sells products, because it just, there's...
But the thing is, like, RMT is still bannable. It's still bannable. The people who are hacking to do it are still like, they can still technically be banned and still should technically be banned. Like, it's a very, very different thing. You're replacing one type of cheater for another type of cheater, both of which are bannable offenses.
I'm not sure I track. You're saying that it's, if it's, if BSG sells their stuff, then it's not bannable. So they're saying it's okay, right? That's what, like, you're saying in the case that it's RMT, it's bannable, so it's okay because it's bannable.
As in, like, it's okay. It's kind of okay to roll back some of the restrictions that aren't really working to allow RMTers to do whatever RMTers used to do, i.e. like hoover up loot and stuff. So you morph the cheaters from doing the carry service things back into the RMT style cheaters, because it's now easier to do that. Because you can still go after them. You can still try to develop the anti-cheat to go after those guys doing that. We don't want people doing either, but one of them affects the player base more than the other. So we'd rather cheaters be doing the one that affects the player base the least, and then you can still pursue them via the anti-cheat methods. That's the difference.
Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree. I just think that going that route, you really, in my mind, for the company, it's sort of like, wait a minute, why don't we just do this? Which, obviously is different in some cases, but I don't know. It just, to me, it just makes sense. It's just weird. Because like, when funny,
also, like, how many people do you think actually do RMT as well? Like, it's a very small minority, right? Whereas, like, if you put RMT in the game, like, it changes the experience completely, because it would be like everyone would feel compelled to do it, otherwise you couldn't really play.
I do believe back when, we didn't have Final Raid, RMT was very rampant. If you look at RMT now, it's not. I haven't looked at it a lot, but I've seen some things, and it's not quite as popular as it used to be.
But even still, right? Those same people are the people getting carry service or whatever. It's like, how popular do we think that is? I mean, it's a minority of the player base.
Yeah, I don't know. It's, I mean, I get the sentiment. I just don't know if I like can fundamentally agree with it. Because I feel like the point of trying to, it's like they want to like maintain the sanctity of the game, like the experience. So like they don't want to like introduce slicks for $5, and they also don't want cheaters doing that as well, right? Yeah. They also don't want people cheating either. But like, it's inevitable, right? So like we try to like mitigate it, and I feel like allowing RMT is like, yes, like maybe on average you don't get rage hacked as much, right? However, like we're fundamentally saying it's kind of okay that you do it, that like RMT is a thing. Like we're like, it's a higher acceptable percentage of cheaters, right? Even though the higher, it's like allowing well, I shouldn't say allowing. It's like saying we could put in more restrictions on our anti-cheat to have better detection for wall hacks. But instead, we're gonna say that wall hacks don't affect people as much as like aimbots do. So we're like more lenient on wall hacks versus, and maybe this is a real thing, I don't know. Maybe. I actually don't. That's a good question. I'd be curious to know what some anti-cheat dev would say
Yeah, I
about
don't know.
that. Anyways, interesting topic. We gotta move on. We gotta get this show in a row. So one thought I had, I'll be brief, is about M4 mods, and I noticed I was again watching your stream, and I saw that Tower brought you an M. I think, or no, maybe it was a YouTube video. Yeah, I think it was your M4
Oh, it was on the
barter.
stream, but yeah, that was on that video. Yeah, I put the highlight in there.
Yeah, and he had like this wicked, like mini short barreled M4 with like a suppressor scope. They had like 100 ergo and like was like 40 or like 45 recoil or something.
Yeah.
I was like really surprised that you could like crank out those numbers with whatever parts you use. It made me think that like maybe one solution, because like the M4 is like I've been thinking about playing Tarkov, and I basically the only thing I want to do is just build an M4 and go to streets, because it feels like there's a lot of choices, and because of that there's a bit more variety because of all those choices in a sense. But essentially I think what's more important is that because the top end of that, like let's say hypothetically you get 98% buffs to the gun, both in like recoil and like ergo, right?
Yeah.
There's like a wide range in there to like play with. So like maybe, and again, we're making trade-offs between recoil and ergo. So like there's a lot more flexibility in that. Whereas like a lot of guns, they don't really have as many parts, it feels like. Like the AK, like you can't change the barrel. You can change the handguard, you can change the stock, you can't change the, like, you know what I mean? It's just, and like maybe it only scales up to like 60% of its original. But because you have such this large playing field, it's like you can really like, you can grab this part from here, this part from here. There's just like so many different things, and then you think about the cost of it all. So I think it's actually, I don't know, just an interesting thought. Like maybe one approach could be you just have guns can scale like ridiculously. Like every gun can scale 98%, and then it's like you can basically build different, like you go like balance, maximum recoil, maximum ergo. Of course, ergo, if you go over 100, you don't get any bonuses. But I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting thing, because again, I was just really shocked at that M4 he built that had like, because I mean, it had a 30 round mag, it had a suppressor, it had a scope on it. It wasn't like a TX15, or it wasn't like 20 rounder mags. I mean, he brought 20s, but I mean, it was still 100 with the 30s. It wasn't like a weird stock that was like ergo prioritized. It was like, man, it looked like a pretty decent gun, all things considered.
It was the snappiest M4 I've used in a long time. Let's put it that way. It felt great, actually. I don't really like cantids normally, and it was good. I mean, we got somebody with it, so, and from a decent distance too. It was just like boom, like right on target straight away. Man, it felt great to use. But yeah, like if some of the other guns work like that, it'd be kind of interesting. Just simply because right now, as you say, most guns just have like one pattern. You go, how close do I want to get it to like the best version of this gun? And then that's just a cost thing. Like, oh, how good do I want the 101 to be? Do I want to, like, I'm going to put on, I'm either going to go suppressed or unsuppressed. Okay, do I want the best handguard, or do I want to go for the Krebs one? Okay, do I want to put on the Nerl charging handle or not? Do I want to go butt pad, or do I want to go for PT3? And that's kind of it. It's like, how far do I want to go? And you just go in priority order.
Yeah.
As to like the most bang for buck components versus their cost, and then just take it from there. Which it's not as interesting as the M4. Like the M4 is great, and I quite like that the M4 is like sort of back with these new parts. I know we've talked about it in a couple of casts, but the fact that you now like it can scale further, and on ergo too, and you can kind of get best of both, but it's like mightily expensive, is a great thing. Like I think when you're saying that some of these things should scale up to 90, I think that's fine, as long as the cost is there. Because it gives you something to kind of progress towards. And it's like these things sort of like get exponentially more expensive. I mean, some of the good M4s are like 400, 500,000 rubles. Like it's just before you've even put a scope on, right? It's like gets to crazy pricing. But I think that's fine. If you want end game stuff, you can make them expensive, because money has never really been a problem in Tarkov. So people should have somewhere to spend it. And I think it's cool. It is cool. It was cool M4.
And I think too that, you know, historically the problem has been like if you want to make a high ergo gun, you have to sacrifice recoil. And if you're going from like 40 recoil to like 70 recoil to get a high ergo gun, that's going to feel really bad to shoot, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you're going from like 40 to like 45 to get a high ergo gun, like that feels much better. And then I feel like you're really getting the pros of the ergo. It's like those, like how Tower set up the scope. I think that works really well because then it's like you can snap long range shots really quickly, get on target really fast, where I think is the value in ergo. Because like most of the time with like a red dot, you know, higher ergo, it's like hip fire versus ADS. Like there's just a certain point where it's like you don't really need a ADS, right? So you're not feel like you're not getting the benefit there. Anyways, should we wrap up, or have we got time for one more? Your call.
How long? It's your topic, so how long is it?
Oh man,
should we do it next week?
Yeah, let's do it next week.
Okay.
I don't want to go too long here. We're already My clock says an hour or two hours and 30 minutes on recording. I know we started a little late, but
okay. We'll push it to next time. That's fine. That's okay. Yeah. It's not an urgently timely topic that we can always open with it next time if you want.
Yeah, so that's the cast. Thanks for tuning in. As always, appreciate your support, and we'll catch you all next week.
Bye-bye.